That's a good question by Ted
It
already.
is. It is an interesting question. So now the problem is, all right, let me go and see where we're at because there's
We
always
got a
this
minute and
little
50 left, is
there
what
is
it
this
says.
yeah, there is this delay always.
Right.
Oh, darn it. I'm sure we've actually started now and I'm
Yep.
yeah, all right. So there we are. So hey, welcome everybody. Um we are we're hanging out tonight with Scott Demers, the creator of Dragons Down. He has graciously decided to come back and chat with us even after the last one, which is also a surprise to me. I just keep that. I'm a little surprised, and it
I
was
had
your
a great time last time.
it was your idea, right? Like you actually hit me up on Discord and said, "Hey, you want to do it?" I'm like, "Hell yeah, sure, let's do this." So welcome.
I had a blast. Yeah,
It
thanks.
was a good time. It
Thanks.
was a good time, and there was a
I
lot
mean,
of
it was a great time for you and me,
yeah, yeah.
right? Whether anyone else was entertained or not, we have no idea.
I mean, I think the magic of this channel is I'm not sure I care. Actually, to be quite honest with you, um,
Right, right.
like
You have one follower and it's yourself. You're like, hey, it's a
it's
success.
no, it's my mom. No, no, that's as good as it gets.
All
Hi,
right.
mom. No,
Too
I
funny.
but I did think it was obviously you have the campaign coming up, but even
Yep.
before that, I think I wanted to first order of business was to congratulate you on the success, but all of the I want to say that the chatter around the game is actually ramped up quite a bit, hasn't it?
Yeah, we're at, I think, number 4. At least we were yesterday. The hotness on Board
Yeah,
Game Geek, which was pretty amazing. We're rolling through our numbers. We're in the doldrums of the campaign right now, but if which is, I call it the grind.
yeah,
Where all the people who've been following you for a year, they hop in those first 2 days, and
yeah,
then
right.
everybody else is just kind of, they discover you, so it's driven by ads and word of mouth and stuff like that. And it's also when you're susceptible to some of the people who are a little bit negative about the campaign,
Sure.
right? Because they make a lot of noise.
So that's interesting. So how has that worked out for you in terms of because you're right. You do have a lot of there's followers or people that have been watching this game actually for quite a while, right? There's a whole Magic Realm community that has been watching this game for way longer than I even can remember.
Yeah.
And especially the new campaign now, everybody who's in there, all the folks in the Discord, right? They're where are the snacks? I have liquor.
Rick
I have liquor.
Rick had asked if, when I sent out an update to the 1100 backers of the
Yeah, yeah.
game, saying that I was going to be on here, Rick was very quick to ask if snacks would be provided.
I do not
So,
have enough for everyone to share, and I'm trying to. And I gained weight on my trip, so I'm trying to now rectify
right,
that. So I'm
Chris,
sorry,
you should.
Rick. No
Why
snacks.
don't you why don't you put your address, Chris, in the chat there, and then people can just swing by.
Yeah, yeah.
No.
Because yeah, no, that's probably a bad idea. That's probably not the wisest. I'm a dumbass because I use my real name so on online. So that's a problem I feel already.
Me as well.
Um,
Quick note on something you mentioned earlier. You said something of like, the game was pretty highly anticipated, and especially
yeah.
by the Magic Realm folks. Obviously, were for 40 years have maybe wanted something simpler. I don't, I'll say, although I think I've earned some measure of respect, there's always an undercurrent of how dare he, right? And which was especially prevalent when it
Oh,
was unproven. Now the Dragon's Down is out, and people are realizing that it was a love letter to Magic Realm, and not a I'm gonna make better than Magic Realm. I think
sure.
that has helped a lot, right?
Yeah. No, I we're a weird bunch, right? I mean, and I'm not even part of like the larger community because I'm a
Yeah.
recluse effectively. But I get it, right? There is. I said I've had that. I've owned that game for I don't even know how long, since 1979. I don't want to
Yep.
do math just right now.
Right.
Yeah, I've known it longer than anything else. I always joke I've known it longer than my wife.
Right.
Magic Realm. So it's hard to unseat that in my head, right? I have a lot of mental investment in that game. So I appreciate their protectiveness of it. Um, but I mean, I my guess is most of those people have another game on their shelf. So it's not like we're not cheating or anything. You can play both games.
Well, it's kind of funny. There's a Russian YouTuber who, or Russian language YouTuber
Okay.
who's been doing some videos about the game, and I found out about him. He messaged me, and it's great. I mean, he does these great videos, and of course, I can't read any of the comments,
Sure.
but I decided to use cut and paste and Google
Sure.
Translate,
All right. All right.
and of course, the comments were largely positive. But then there was this one guy who was like, "Well, this is basically just a ripoff of Magic Realm, and here's what it is," and it was like, sure, somebody who's a Magic Realm fanatic finding out about this game for the first time, their initial, because we've heard so many times of, well, this game was inspired by Magic Realm. Yeah, but it's not. It's not Magic Realm, and it's not, and it doesn't, and it actually feels more like a marketing connection rather than a real connection. So,
Rick says this is the game Magic Realm should have been. Maybe it could have become on its own, but it wasn't really popular enough to get age to make it happen. I mean, I think. Look, I say Magic Realm is its own thing, and frankly, to be honest, I never did want something simpler than Magic Realm, right? Like I never wanted a streamlined Magic Realm, and still don't to this day. Now, I do want Dragons Down, and I do appreciate. I do love that game on its own,
mm,
and I do love that it is very
right, but you're
reminiscent
not.
of Magic Realm. I love both of those things, and I can hold two contradictory ideas in my head.
No, that's
You
right.
know,
But
right?
that's Chris. That's a great point, which is, um, you didn't want a simplified Magic Realm, but Dragon's Down still scratches an itch, and it's different enough.
Yeah,
Um, clearly inspired by, but certainly I wasn't afraid to rip things out. Like
yeah,
the idea that you can play, 100 and XD2. I don't remember the number. I'm not great at math. With now that I've added some more to the game, but
yeah.
you combine a lineage and a class, and it creates fundamentally different characters with some overlap. Um, so because I remember as a kid going, holy cow, I can play any of 16 different
Right,
characters, and
right.
that was the most monumental thing to me, right? um
And
so
at the time, that was pretty cool because otherwise, in a game, you could probably expect, well, like if you played Dungeon, not that, geez, I'm comparing Magic Realm to Dungeon. I've committed a lot of sins in my time, um, but comparing Magic Realm to Dungeon is probably a pretty big one.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, you play, fighter, thief, cleric, mage, done, right?
yep,
You know,
yeah.
uh,
And let me be explicitly clear and state this publicly: Magic Realm is my favorite game of all time, and that includes Dragons Down in the mix. Like, I like Magic Realm better than Dragons Down. But the intent was never, the intent of Dragons Down was to take it in a different direction and make it accessible. 32-page rule book, of which 16 of those pages are
yeah,
appendices. You know, and 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 I couldn't be more thrilled with the reception. We have over 400 people on our Discord server
yeah,
now. Um, and that started from nothing. I was like, maybe I'll create this Discord server and play a couple games with some people,
yeah.
and and now it's a life of its own.
I think I said as I play around with Dragons Down more, I appreciate certain things about it more than I appreciate Magic Realm, and appreciate certain things a little less. You know what I mean? Like they have their own sort of highs and lows. I already told you this. I've already bowed down at the combat. I think the combat is a wonderful mechanic which catches so many of the same vibes, but is ultimately, I think, a little bit looser in that middle, right? That ever present that combats I can win, right? Magic Realms combats I win, combats I lose, and there's a small thread of combats that are interesting.
Yeah, we've increased the
And you've increased that band, and I love that, right? And I think that's, there's a lot of times when you sit there and go, well, I think I might be able to do this, but it's going to get into that 25% chance to hit and 20, that kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. And you can do that in Magic Realm with fumble and stumble, but I hate those rolls.
I'm not a fan of that either. Yeah. I like the idea. I'm a big fan of deterministic things, or not. I don't know if deterministic is the right word, but like where the luck is mitigated. Yeah. I never set out to design a game where you go, if I compare this stat to that stat, if I roll higher than a 7, I win. Otherwise, I take a wound or something like that. I always wanted something that was more dynamic. And so even in the games I play with fans online, it's really fun to see the wheels turning and ultimately the interactions being complex enough, even though it's all there in front of you, for someone to say, I think I got this, let's give it a shot.
Yeah. Oh, this is how I'm gonna play. I put the cubes down. Now let's roll some dice. And that's good. That's a good moment, I think, right? Yeah. What the heck? Oh God, man, I wish my memory was a tiny bit better. The guy who wrote Balatro, that the weird solitaire roguelike, if you've seen it, if you haven't, you should at least try once. He talked about that moment where you put the play down and then like pull the lever of the slot machine and see if that worked out for you, is sort of that magic that he was going for. And I think Dragon's Down has that, where you go, I put these down, bam, bam, bam. Right. And okay, and I think I got this. I should have this, but let me roll and see what happens. And then sometimes it works out great, and sometimes you're like, why did everyone hit me this round? Like, what possibly was that?
One of my favorite, possibly my favorite game moment of all in Dragon's Down is I was playing a conjure. Not a conjure. I was playing somebody who could. The spell I had was Open Gate. And so I could just gate out of the clearing, and it's a single cube, so you can cast it really fast. So if you get into trouble, so there were like 5 or 6 orcs all targeting me in a clearing, and so I put all my speed into Open Gate and cast it to disappear. And I kind of in my head imagined, me making some obscene gesture to the orcs as I disappeared into the gate I had summoned. The bad news for me is Open Gate takes you to a random gate.
Right.
And there was a 1 in 4 chance of me appearing at the gate that was already in my clearing. There was a gate there. That's how I had moved there in the first place. So I roll the die, and I roll the gate I'm already on. Thereby, like, the obscene gesture happens, and then I appear right back just in time to be struck by all 5 orcs and killed.
Okay, so silly question there. So in that case, the combat round just continues, or did you escape for that round but then get dumped back in next round?
It just continues.
That's too bad.
Right. And the funny part about that is that since that time, it's actually happened to me twice, always playing with the same person who's also a fan and backer of the game, who is, it still mocks me online, which is kind of fun to be mocked by a fan of the game, right?
So and we're already off track, which is great. Maybe, I mean, that's good. Yeah. Like with the just sort of. I mean, I just came back from a trip. I'm like 12 hours out of sync with my time. So if I'm loopy and my amount of preparation seems crappy, you're probably onto something. But we're already off track, so that's a good thing. But yeah, I mean, so just a ton of accolades coming down now. You got Game of the Year from Dungeon Dive, I believe, right?
We did.
Azure Death's number 8 best solo game of all time. Now, of all time's a little pretentious. Let's understand something. That's a lot of time. Like, you might write another game. I mean, for God's sake. And then where does it fit? But having said that, but those guys do a lot of games, though. They churn through a lot of games, so that's pretty high praise, I feel. Right?
Yeah. no doubt about it. But I'll tell you the thing that's the most meaningful to me is when someone posts on Discord or Board Game Geek about how they are pulled back to when they were X years old and
Right.
trying to play Magic Realm or playing, maybe they were, you know what I mean? And they go, this, and I can now do this with my kids, or I can,
Yeah.
and, it's like, this hits me right in the feels, right? That's why I did this.
Well, so that's a good point, because I did see that Teresa Michelson
Mickelson. I don't know how it's
posted
pronounced. Yeah.
posted on Board Game Geek a very glowing review, I thought, and she's run Magic Realm parts.
The part shop. She's
shop
the
forever.
goddess of
Yeah.
Magic Realm. I mean, I played in online tournaments of Magic Realm via email server that she ran 20 plus years ago. And so then to have her appear in the Discord server and find out that she had then gone and purchased Dragon's Down and then played it. I mean, and here's the cool thing. On the Discord server, I actually created a thread like, hey, I suspect that there's going to be a lot of comments here welcoming Teresa. And sure enough, it was like people were pulling up like emails from 15 years ago where Teresa had sent them a part that they were missing from their game,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think everyone who's ever bought a copy from eBay has dealt with Teresa at some point. Chris Scott said, I never played Magic Realm, born in 1979, but I discovered this game last week. Once I learned the rules, I immediately picked up a copy and backed the Kickstarter. It's an amazing game. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think, it is. It's the new Grail game now for some folk, right? You're going to have a whole generation of folks that have never heard of Magic Realm and wonder what the hell all these old guys are talking about, but have played Dragons Down or seen Dragons Down, and that's sort of cool.
Well, one of my certain goals is that this inspires some folks to take another run at Magic Realm. They'll have to unlearn a couple things, but that would be exciting to me. And speaking of that, Ted had asked that question before we even started streaming of what are some ideas that came from the early design that I tested and abandoned. There's a lot. So the original concept was not cubes, but it was combined chits, and the idea being, one of the beauties of Magic Realm is this idea of, right, you combine a move chit and a fight chit, right?
Sure.
And that you have some limits. And what I found is, 90% of the time, until you get wounded or fatigued, you are playing, like, every time I play this, fight H4 with 2 stars, 2 asterisks, I'm always teaming it with this H6.
Sure.
Right? Because that's my optimum play, and I can only spend 2 asterisks worth of effort is the way Magic Realm works. And so the original plan was actually to maintain a chit system and reduce it down to about 8 chits or 6 chits, but then have them be combined, fight and move. I have over here somewhere, I don't know exactly where it is in the mess over here, but I have my prototype from 20 years ago that has that in it. That concept.
So you had like a move and fight chit kind of concept where it was like, oh, this is a fast attack but a crappy move, and a mid kind of thing.
Yeah, and then and then that way, if I'm fighting, let's say we're doing player versus player, and I'm fighting you, obviously I just pull the one I want and I put it face down, and then we do this reveal. And so that was the original intent, and that became unwieldy because it's just kind of a foreign concept. And I think moving to the cube system and then saying, look, you're just filling boxes on cards, whether it's a lineage card or a class card or a treasure card or an item card, and then that determines your characteristics. Greatly simplified it because now you have your component bits, which are the speed cubes and the might cubes. Right. So that's an example of where simplification makes it better. Right?
Yes.
Significantly better, I feel, in the end.
Yeah, and I do like the fight and move, and yes, all of that I love. Having said that, like I said, we've talked, and we're going to talk about this a little later too.
This
So
is,
I'm
by the
going to
way,
leave it.
everybody listening to this, get used to this. This is exactly what Chris did to me last time when she goes, all that being said, and then counterpoint. So I'm ready. I'm ready.
But no, no. We're going to talk about this a little later too, right? Because
Yeah.
we have a little bit of discussion about the hybrids and some of the new stuff that you have coming down the pike. So I'm going to
Yep.
leave it for now. Berserk asked me, and Berserk asked me. I assume me because or you actually. What is about Dragon's Down that you like less than Magic Realm? He's never played Magic Realm. Could it be that you like MR more because nostalgia, emotional connections rather than something fundamental about the game? I will say A, yes. A little bit, yes, for sure. 100%. I literally, I have a degree in pinball and Magic Realm. Like that is truly what I went to school for. Arguably physics, but truly it was Magic Realm, various role-playing games, and pinball. So there is a lot of nostalgia in there for sure. I will say that. The one thing, and I will let you answer afterward, the one thing I like a little more in Magic Realm, strangely enough, is the map. I like the map a little more in Magic Realm. I think the map is a little more flavorful in Magic Realm than Dragon's Down. I think each individual tile in Dragon's Down, though there are some really cool tiles in Dragon's Down, I think each individual tile in Dragon's Down is less interesting than, say, the crag in Magic Realm. Even though you have a crag, like in and things like that in Dragon's Down, I feel it all sort of blends together the map a little bit. And the map in Magic Realm is a little twistier typically, and a little loopier. And you get some geographies where you go, oh, I didn't realize this was that good or that bad kind of thing. And I think you get that in Magic Realm, and I don't think you get that as much in Dragon's Down. I don't dislike the map in Dragon's Down. I think the map is very functional in it, and it does what it's supposed to do. But I think the map in Magic Realm is more flavorful, if that makes any sense. And you can disagree, and that's fine. But that's sort of that's where I'm at with that.
Yeah, my Magic Realm hit me at the right time. I could stare at the White Knight with his great sword and plate armor, those little, and something that Magic Realm does really well, I thought, granted at the cost of a ton of setup, was you created a true world, right? You place all the chits on the map, so if you just the stuff is determined when you start the game, right? That if you find the Crypt of the Night, that there is some stuff that's going to be there. Now we're introducing that concept, which was left out of the original Dragon's Down, but Magic Realm is a fully fleshed out world. Dragon's Down is really close, but there are some simplifications. The common one that everybody always calls out to me is, why can't I buy a horse? Right? And until natives, why can't I hire natives? The world felt, if you hadn't played Magic Realm, Dragon's Down felt really rich. If you had played Magic Realm and understood it and got it, Dragon's Down without the natives expansion might feel a little flatter because the natives exist for the purposes of the missions, not for their interaction, if that makes sense.
That does.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and that's now. I will say I like the feel of the characters in Magic Realm, and when I was going through my mental checklist, like this is when Dragon's Down first hit, and I was sort of ranking the game sort of mentally. I said, yeah, I think the characters are better in Magic Realm. I actually have reversed that. I think the characters in Magic Realm are more flavorful, but less mechanically interesting at this this point. I actually have sort of changed lanes on that. I'm like, I like to like just the sheer combination. I mean, you just win by combination. Um, right? There's so many different combos, and there are bad choices. You can make bad choices about characters in Dragon's Down.
Yeah, you're
Um,
not protected. You can
yeah,
be your like the joke I always make, and it so for those of you who don't know, Scott Alden, also known as Aldi, is one of the founders of Board Game Geek, and he's a big fan of the game. Um, and I was on a live stream with him a week ago, and one of the things he said is he goes, "I always play a dwarf cleric in my when I can." Right? Well, dwarf cleric is one of the worst choices in Dragon's Down because you're a statue. You can't run from anything. You're not fast enough to hit things, right? It's a tough. I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just a tough character to
yeah,
play. Don't play that for your first game. So that was his first game. And he goes, God, I was frustrated. I couldn't do anything. I'm like, yeah, that's true.
yeah. I mean,
So
there are suboptimal choices. Like if your intent is to win the game, then yes, there are some choices you go, that's you probably shouldn't do that.
right,
And definitely a few choices where I would not. My one thing when Dragon's Down, I should say, first hit the table, here I screwed up because I'm teaching the game and I let everybody choose their own stuff, and I should have pre-chosen the characters because a lot of folks just made choices which made it very hard for them to
yep,
do the thing they had in their head. How's that, right? You're
yep,
like, nah, you're a little too slow for that, pal. You're having a hard time. You don't have enough cubes to do the thing you need to do, and so on. Um,
yep.
I don't think it's a
No,
bad
spot
thing,
on.
by the way. I think that's a fine thing. You know what I mean? Like,
As long as if you have people like my game group, if I rolled it out and they all got slaughtered on the third turn of the game, they would they'd have a good laugh about it and we'd continue on. But there are people I know who have taught the game to others, and then they didn't have a good experience because of the very thing you just talked about. And like I saw one guy went and rated the game a 3.
yeah,
Total luck fest. And I'm like, this isn't the kind of game you can make a judgment after a single game, and especially when you didn't understand it or weren't kind of coached about the nuances of it.
yeah. And
So
I like. I mean, and I love that. But that's sort of that's my gig, right? I love. So I mean, I'm gonna jump to my I have my list of
yeah,
questions. I'm jumping down to 8. So I talked about
did you
hybrids.
ever email these to me? I don't remember any
I
questions.
did not. I'm so sorry. I
That's
apologize.
fine.
Because again, you have to understand. I just got back and I wrote the damn questions. So
Yeah, yeah, no
I'm ill
worries.
prepared.
Chris was in Japan, for
I
those of you who don't
feel
know.
terrible that I'm hoping that I can vaguely fake this for 2 or 3 hours and people go away and go, that was okay.
Yeah,
That's
no, you're doing great so
that's where
far.
I'm at. So I talked about hybrids and I was playing a game and I had the ranger in the game and the
Mm-hmm.
executioner in the game.
Yep.
And both of those characters, if you don't know, they have one magic cube, right? So the ranger has 4 brown cubes, 2 red, so 2 might cubes, 3 speed cubes, and then 1 green cube.
Yep.
And his power is what? To reroll a search in the woods, I believe.
Yep.
Um,
That's correct.
and I sat there, and as I'm playing the ranger, I'm sitting there going, damn it. I mean, I pick the classes always randomly. So what I do when I play the games is I pick the class randomly, and I then pick
Mm.
a lineage to go with it,
Yep.
just so I'm not, right? Because I used to pick both of those randomly, and I got too many dwarf clerics, I think, to continue that. Um, and I was sitting there, and I'm trying to ambush Archer, right? And I'm sitting there, and I'm thinking, I just wish I was the Archer.
Yep.
And so that's one where I was sitting there and I was thinking about it. I was like, man, I don't like. First off, I was like, I don't like this because that's just a gut reaction. I'm an old man. I yell, right? I shake my fist and yell at the clouds. I don't like this. And I thought about it, and I actually came to terms with it. And I thought, well, this is actually a very interesting point, which is those hybrids. You have to be very careful with them because they could be a trap. If you play a ranger thinking, well, I'm going to be the penultimate ambush archer,
Yep.
you're not. You're sort of screwed in that sense because you don't.
Yep.
You're not. That cube is very important. That speed cube, and you need to know what you're going to do with that magic cube, or else you're gonna have a hard time. I think.
Yeah, so that brings up a good point, right? In the initial release of the game, in the core box, there are spellcasters and there are bashers, right?
Yeah,
Club, clubbers, and what Desolation introduces are those hybrids, and the hybrids are highly thematic. And a great example of that is the Executioner, who has 3 might cubes, which means he's on par with the Berserker, the Knight, right? Actually, even I think beyond. No, I think it's the same as the Knight. I don't recall exactly, but the point being is you can, as the Executioner, one hit even the unarmored Guardian right out of the box on day one or turn one if you found one. Um, but that comes at a price, right?
yeah,
Which is you're slow, and so I emphasized theme with the Desolation characters more so than I
yeah,
did with the when you're going, oh, it's either a melee, a clubber, or a or a spellcaster. When you start blending those together, you need to really give them flavor for them to be interesting to play. So
well, and I thought it was, and that's one of that, by the way, is what ultimately led to my switching of, right, my when I'm placing, when I'm comparing the two games. And at some point, I'll get over comparing the two games, but not tonight. I'm sorry. When someday, Scott, someday I will. I promise you.
I
Um,
long for that conversation that
it'll get
doesn't
there. It'll
include
get there.
in
It'll get
Magic
there.
Realm.
It'll get there. But what switched me was that whole thought process with that one cube hybrids. I'm sitting there going, that is a huge opportunity cost, because that Executioner pays for that, like you said, right?
Mhm.
Because being slow, that it's all fine and good. My buddy Scott, my other Scott,
Yeah.
always are in all our role playing games. He's like, accuracy is king, because if you don't hit, your average DPS is 0.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Right.
right? So you have to hit. So accuracy wins over damage. Like, obviously there's a tipping point, but right, and
Yep.
but accuracy is important. So for instance, with in a lot of Dragons Down, I like the three red cubes. I don't necessarily go for that. I think two's probably enough in most cases. But you have to have the speed cubes to then hit, right? But
Yeah.
um,
And again, that it's all very situational too, because um, if you're facing a single monster and
right,
you have some armor, hey, no problem that I'm a little bit slow. I just need to get in that one good hit. So that's that to me. Like my goal was never to make sure that all heroes had equal chances of survival. If
sure,
anything, I wanted the idea that if let's say you and I were playing and you had never played Dragons Down before, that I could mulligan myself by choosing something a little
right,
little bizarre,
little
right?
off.
Um,
So,
you want to address some of these questions that we've
yeah,
gotten in here?
so I did see Berserk asked, do you plan to go beyond Magic Realm?
So so let's say Magic Realm as a retail release, absolutely. Super Realm, which is what Chris plays, which is a mega
Well, no.
expanded.
I do not take any credit for
Oh,
Super Realm. That's Gex on the Magic Realm
but that's what you
Discord.
play, isn't it? But you play that, right?
I do not. I play
Oh,
a bastardization of questing the realm, effectively.
oh, okay, yeah. So there have been numerous fan expansions of Magic Realm. I've actually never played. I played on Realm Speak. I played some of the expanded Realm stuff
Hmm.
about up until about 5 years ago. But the truth is, at this point, I'm not playing anything, and I'm not interested in playing anything that takes Magic Realm Beyond because I don't want to be colored by it. I have I have a lot of ideas, and given how well the campaign has gone, I have begun work on what's next. So just know that's coming,
So,
or that's work's underway.
well, and so to add to that question a little bit, because I actually did have this question at the very end, but I never got to it, because we're off track already. Um,
Sorry.
no, no, Actually, this is perfect. This is good. I'd rather have a conversation. This isn't an interview. This is a conversation with me laughing at my own jokes a lot. It's fine. So how long of a tail do you think this thing has? Like, how, you know what I mean, in terms of you creating content for this? You know, you said you have an idea for what's next. Like,
Mm-hmm.
is this a multi-year thing going on in your head? Like, do you have sort of a long term plan, or is it just as we go, right? Every expansion as it comes, kind of thing.
Um,
Let me just wait one last. Do you have like a final end state where you're like, that's the game, boom, that's the magnum opus?
yeah, let's say this. Dragons Down with natives is everything that I thought should be in the game,
Okay.
or at least that was my initial vision. But what I've realized is that Dragons Down, especially the way I design games, which is, this thing is a 150 tab spreadsheet. That's what this is.
Yeah.
And every lineage is balanced mathematically. Every treasure, the cost of it is balanced mathematically. The fame value you get for a monster, how tough a native is, a leader versus a regular guy. It's almost obscene how much time and effort I put into that. So, but when I get to the end and I realize, I have formulas now to add new monsters that this is now a system in which you can insert things. So what's the end state? Let me do a little bit of a brain dump. Additional terrain packs. With each terrain pack comes monsters, sites, civilization locations, natives, wandering natives, wilderness tokens, civ tokens, merchants, treasures, etc. Right? So when I say, I have ideas for terrain packs, know that it's a long tail for a terrain pack. I would terrain pack that is special tiles that aren't part of a set, like the woods, but rather I'm making this up, but like where a tile is Shelob's lair,
right?
And instead of you, so when you find it or you go to it, which is probably I'm just dumping here. Don't hold me to any of this, but which could be a legendary treasure site that takes you to a tile that isn't even placed connected to the other ones, just off on the side, and you play each of the clearings individually. For example, I have the rules done for development game and how that would work. The idea that you start out as a dwarf villager and you create your own character as you play the game and end up making it much more of a legacy and or role playing type experience. I have those rules done. I haven't play tested them at all, but I have them done. I have NPCs that I've designed. I'm sure I'm forgetting some things. I have a whole nother set of 35 spells designed.
Yeah.
Right. There's just a ton of things you could do. So what will I do? Playtesting will determine that, and actual interest in the game. Because what I don't want to do is bludgeon people with just hot mess. I'm obsessed about making sure it's done right.
No, and that's fair. That's fair. And I do think I will say that a game like Dragons Down does benefit greatly from combinations. It's a combinatorial, right? Like that's the joy of it a little bit. How does this thing that I've played with since the beginning work now with the new items and the new terrain and the new monsters kind of thing? So I do think that's interesting. I don't want horses either, by the way. I don't want to.
We'll come back to horses in just a moment. If I don't go chronologically, I'm not going to be able to follow this. So
yeah, I'm sorry.
About negative.
I am jotting them down, by the way. When I do see questions, I'm writing them down. So you don't have to be too
Okay.
obsessive, but yeah, I just
Okay.
so yeah, go. Nutwick said, when you see negative reviews, do you think they all have a bit of truth, or are some useless criticism?
There can it be both? Yeah. So when I see negative criticism, most often it is this isn't the kind of game for them. And I loved Rick's comment about how it's not about winning. And so think of like most Euro gamers. Most Euro gamers are you're min maxing your turn to make sure you get enough points so you win the game. Um, and that is absolutely not what Magic Realm or Dragons Down are, right? And it is about the journey and making sure you're laughing on the way about the absurdity of the things that happen to you. And although you are playing to win, it is possible that you can do all the right things and still lose because of luck that overcame your luck mitigation, right?
Right.
And so when someone publishes a bad review, there's only one review that anybody published where I just vehemently disagreed with what was said. I won't go into the details on it, but the short version is most often it's the game's just not for them, and I fully respect that, right? When people say, "Oh, it's just random luck fest," that's the kind of stuff that I go, "Well, you didn't actually put in an effort to understand the game. You're just kind
Okay.
of dismissing after a single play or something, right?" So,
I mean, I think, Rick, if you wanted horses is the next question, literally
all
in
right,
chronologically.
okay,
I think if you want horses, I would just make it an item where you get an extra move, and that's sort of where I'd go with it. I do think they're a little bit overpowered in Magic Realm in that they're a move chit, they're essentially a hit point. You know what I mean, like that kind of thing, right? There are a lot of things. Buying a tremendous warhorse is the win condition for many characters.
what
Um,
do you do? What do you do as the White Knight, right? If you're playing in just the standard Magic Realm game, and we're in those tournament games I played 20 years ago, is you sell your greatsword, you sell your armor, you sit at the chapel and you haggle with the order until you get the warhorse and a morning star, and then you're damn near invincible.
yeah,
It's broken. So horses in Dragon's Down would be an item card. It would be a new item card and/or treasure card, I suppose, if we were to add something like that. And and yeah, it would have an impact like more about movement or something along the lines. I would go for some kind of simple rules like what we did with leaders. For example, in Dragon's Down, you can't send a leader off on their own like you
right.
can in Magic Realm, where they're this completely other character. That's just needless complexity in my eyes. And so leaders give you an extra action every turn, which is huge, right?
Yeah.
But it is simple.
Yeah, no, I do
So,
appreciate that too. Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I think some characters need it, especially rules as written in Magic Realm. Like the dwarf needs to have someone to carry him
right.
around, right? Like that's a thing. Um, but if you don't put weird restrictions on the dwarf, then you don't need this other whole set of rules to sort of mitigate that kind of thing. So I do
Right.
I do appreciate that. But yeah, I think
The
I
other,
think even horses as a card, yeah, would work fine, right? I mean, it's just a theme.
uh-huh.
You could carry more stuff, and or more maybe an item slot or two, like a tool slot or
Well,
something.
and here's the thing though, so let's dream together. If I added horses, I probably wouldn't categorize them into ponies. What is it? Ponies, horses, and war horses. I think.
Workhorses, yes, yes.
I think. I think instead you go. There's just this concept of a horse, and every card has slightly different characteristics on it about maybe their health and some various things
Sure,
like that. Um, all of which is just mathematically equates to a formula that says here's what the cost is, right?
right.
And then what that would do is that would allow you to theoretically add another item, and I would probably do it as an item, maybe a treasure, but which could be armor for a horse, right? But then your horse would have to have enough strength to carry it, and so
Yeah,
just some very simple stuff like that.
that sounds like you got complicated right there a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right, and so just know that I'm always going to default to
yeah,
easy. When I, in the playtesting group, inevitably what happens is everybody throws in more complexity, and I often
Sure.
reject it completely, right?
Sure.
Because I don't want that, right? I want it to be like, even if, for everybody who's looked at the rules of natives, what you realize is natives behave exactly like monsters. They haggle like merchants, and when they're hired, they act like an elemental, right? And oh, by the way, your relationship, and I think this bothers you a little bit, Chris, but the relationship isn't this
Yeah.
created manifestation by me that says, well, the berserker
Right.
gets along great with the watch, but he hates these. No, it's just the simple thing of how many icons match. And then that way, by deciding whether you're human or dwarf or gnome, and the combination of your class defines those relationships. By the way, that idea for that mechanism for the relationships of natives, which is my favorite thing about natives, was not my idea. That was George's idea.
Yeah.
George, on the server, on
The
the Discord
Discord.
server, that was his idea,
Yeah.
and so he has a design credit in the game, actually.
Yeah.
So
I don't dislike that. No, I actually don't dislike that. I think it's fairly straightforward, fairly simple. It's elegant, right?
uh,
And
but
again,
that's a great example thematically, though,
yeah,
of like, by having those three attributes, you create some natural alignments, right, of relationships between the natives. And so that keeps it simple, and you can understand it really quickly. You do lose, as compared to Magic Realm, the depth of the artificial
sure,
relationships that imply a past.
absolutely,
You know,
yes, yeah.
and
No,
so
that's a good
you
point.
have
It's a
to
good point.
make those up in your mind.
But you sort of can't have that. You gave that up. You gave that up when you went from bespoke characters to the combination a little bit, right?
You nailed it, right? How am
Right.
I going to do that if I go, well, no, a human assassin gets along great with these guys, but yeah, it would go downhill quickly.
So I have a question, but then Nutmeg has a question. So I have a question. So you say, okay, everything's balanced mathematically in a spreadsheet. No, I have done this, by the way. Like I putz around. I write tabletop role playing game stuff, right, and so on. And I balanced all the weapons and maneuver options and so on. On when do you break that? Like, at what point do you go, this thing's going to be a little different, and this is how it's going to be? Do you, or don't you?
Um, can you give me a little bit of an example? Just, I want to make sure I understand the question.
Well, I'm just saying. So let's say you have all your monsters on a sheet, and your monsters like this.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
This is how I combine all the stats and so on to do a thing, and then you go, this monster's an outlier, and this is how.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so there are absolutely things like that. So if you take any monster or native chit in the game and look at it on its face, if you add up its might and its speed of attack and its maneuver speed, if
Mm-hmm.
that's greater than 6, it's better than you, right? If it's lower than 6, it's
Sure.
worse than you, right?
Right.
Um, and so anytime that I had to make something better than you, in a sense, you go, well, that's kind of cheating in that I'm using. Now, my logic for that is you have the benefit of foresight. I can look on both sides of a monster chit
Sure.
and go, well, if I play this, I beat him if he flips, and things like that, that obviously the chip can't do. So the AI, if you will, of that, there was some, fudging to get things, or maneuver speed is +1, generally speaking, for any monster that can fly. And I
Okay.
did that because I didn't want to have flying as a, well, you can only hit it if you have a ranged weapon, and
Right.
right. Okay, because to me, a dragon is kind of swooping in on you, and so when you hit it, it represents the fact that I'm trying to hit it, and it's swooping in on me. Or the griffin's a great example of that. There absolutely are things that break the rules, but typically it has to do with its value. So I'll give an example. Every every monster and native in the game has a calculated fame value, which is then normalized down to 1,
Okay.
which is the weakest thing in the game, is the villager at 1. Okay. Um, the animated skeletons uh, of the necromancer, I believe, should be a 1, but I made them a 3 so that if you get into an endless fight with a necromancer, you can earn some value for that. And then the console has a higher fame value than what his skills would indicate, which is thematically to represent that he is the king's representative, and you should get some fame and or infamy if you were to kill him. Outside of that, I think they all calculate out.
Cool.
I think.
Yeah.
That was way
I'm,
longer answer than you needed, I'm sure.
no, I like that answer. I'm dying to see the spreadsheet, by the way.
Uh,
just the sheer magic of the spreadsheet. Because again, I have done this in lesser. I mean, believe just right. I'm an armchair quarterback, if nothing else. But I've done this in lesser cases where I just have a sheet full of weapon values and right and all these stats and so. But and I love all that, right? Like I love that kind of calculation. Well, how much average damage is this doing based on blah, given and so on and so. I love all that.
It's frightening the magnitude that I've taken that because I've done things like the combat system that's in the game is probably the 5th iteration of it, right? Even search successes are 4. Well, let's calculate it out because I'm not just making a judgment call. I do not do things by the seat of my pants.
So Nutmeg asks, when you develop a game over many years, what's the easiest thing to lose sight of, and how do you bring it back to the original vision?
Yeah, that's let me think about that one a little bit. You can get excited about some new idea or concept. Like I didn't include treasures within treasures in the game because I couldn't come up with a way to do it that ensured they would actually appear in the game, right? Without costing all of you setup time. So in Magic Realm, you have to go through this elaborate setup process. Sort all, shuffle all the treasures together. Put 2 here, put 3 here, put 5 here, put 4 there. Then shuffle in all the treasures within treasures, and then you set up a whole. You go through the setup again. It's brutal, right? And I always knew I wanted you to go shuffle, shuffle, shuffle of the treasures, shuffle, shuffle, shuffle the deep treasures, and you're done, right? So obviously we figured out a simple way to do it, which occurred to me after Dragon's Down was released, and that's what legendary treasures are, right? Is how you do that. Interesting note on that. So the legendary treasures, nobody knows this because you haven't seen the cards yet, but the legendary treasures on the back of the card has the deep treasure card back, not like some new legendary treasures, even though they're kept separate. Anyone have a guess, or Chris, if you do, as to why I did that? Any thoughts?
I don't know because I haven't quite looked at the setup. I haven't seen what the setup is, but I mean, it
has to do. So it's a simple one actually. It's for scenarios.
Yeah.
I wanted those to be where you're questing for this legendary treasure, and you wanted to be able to shuffle it into a deck of cards. Sure. And in the end, I then incorporated that into the legendary treasure sites where you typically shuffle the legendary treasures in with some deep treasures, so you don't know which of those treasures is actually the legendary one, right?
There you go.
So, anyway,
Dan Reeder asked, were there any concerns about intellectual property rights with Magic Realm?
0.
Yeah.
And the reason being, it has nothing to do with the fact that nobody knows where the rights to Magic Realm are or anything like that. You cannot copyright mechanics.
Right. Yeah,
and I have not taken anything from Magic Realm. Yeah.
Right. Well, you could have literally copied the rules to Magic Realm had you wanted to, as long as you don't use the wording and any specific bits. You're good because you cannot copyright game mechanics.
You cannot copyright.
You couldn't use the symbols, for instance, the symbology or any specific wording from the rules.
Right.
Um,
And
but
let's and so I will say this, right? When I first set out on this journey 20 years ago, um, I actually wanted to do Magic Realm in ancient Greece. I'm a huge Grecophile. My first big game was Hellenica Story of Greece, which is a 4X for 1 to 7 players set in ancient Greece. And so that's what I had hoplites and, minotaurs and all kinds of stuff like that. Um, so this is circling back to Nutmeg's question. Over time I realized that what I actually wanted to do was an approachable game, and I'm a huge fan of fantasy, Western fantasy. So I didn't want to go down the path of like Gloomhaven, where all these made up races that are combinations that you haven't seen before. I actually wanted it to be rooted in something that was a little bit familiar,
yeah,
Tolkien-esque, so to speak.
yeah, yes, Tolkien D&D esque, right? I mean, it's very
100%.
familiar. It's a very familiar universe, right? The classes are
Yep.
all very familiar. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of classes, and they're not all, but everybody knows what if you get executioner, I can go, it's a guy with a hood, and he's got a giant axe, probably, right?
You
Like
got it.
you know what it is,
And he
right?
intimidates the villagers.
Yeah, right.
I'm working on some classes now though that I'm so giddy and excited about. Stuff that won't be in natives, but like the truth is, I'm the world's worst secret keeper in that sense. Like I just want to go, here's what I'm working on, and oh my god, it's so cool, and your minds are gonna blow off the top of your bodies. And then I realized that no, this is just me working in my basement, having this excitement about a game, right?
Yeah, Dan Reeder said, "I'm very glad you didn't go the route that current fantasy board games are trending. The classic Western fantasy is still great." I do actually appreciate that. Like one of my sadnesses. That's a little too strong a word for this, by the way. So take that for what it's worth. Was that when they did third edition D&D, their main world was Eberron with like that techno magic kind of vibe and sort of almost cyberpunky sort of. I'm like, could we just do Greyhawk again, please? In right, like that's sort of what I wanted, and we got this. Hey, right? This whole almost cyberpunk, but not steampunk, fantasy punk sort of vibe to it. And I'm like, you know what? I can do without that. I do want the.
That's
elf,
a great.
right.
It's a great point though. Like when I was doing Dragon's Down, Greyhawk is my Dungeons and Dragons universe, and so absolutely I was thinking of things from Greyhawk, right?
Yeah.
I don't I have not played Aeon Trespass. I've heard good things about it, but I have not played it. Truth is, I would play a lot less games than most people think I do, because I am putting full-time effort into designing Dragon's Down and expanding it, and running the campaign and all that. So
he said, "Long live Greyhawk." So I'm like, "Yes, long live Greyhawk." Absolutely, I love Greyhawk. By the way, I do love Greyhawk.
Yeah,
I don't know why compared to any other iteration or again because I was a teenager. That's probably really why. It's the same reason I like Electric Light Orchestra, because I was 14 when or 12 when I heard that crap.
So a Jeff Lynne song comes on and
absolutely. That is the one celebrity I will mourn. By the way, I absolutely 100%. Yes. So I will go no further on that, or I will start to weep as we speak.
Yeah, I know. Don't bring me down. See what I did
you win. By the way, you win. You just won. You just won this interview.
Yeah, huge yellow fan.
So, yeah. So okay. So now I'm the one late to the party. I do get this, but the new campaign's well underway. I was in Japan, and I had to manipulate my computer such that I could actually pledge it, because because there was a whole thing. But anyway, so I did want to ask you.
Mm-hmm.
So we're getting natives and legends. Let's talk about natives specifically first, just because I think legends was an add-on, right? You came up with that originally it was natives, right? And then
So
go ahead.
it was Dragonstown natives, and then my intention was to come back. I'm going to be very open here. From a marketing perspective, natives is a full expansion. I didn't, and I was really interested in understanding if a mini expansion could bring people to a Kickstarter campaign as well. And so originally I was going to hold and do Legends as a separate campaign, but then I realized that because of the timing of manufacture and all that, I'd be looking at I'm now a year away. It'd be this time next year I'd be doing Legends. And the truth is, I had rolled it out to two different playtest groups for blind playtesting, and the feedback was fantastic on it. And so I went to my publisher and I said, "Can I include Legends in the Natives campaign? And I'll hold it as a surprise, and I'll only reveal it the day before the campaign," kind of thing.
Okay.
And he said, I think it's a great idea. And then that allows me to focus my efforts not on Legends, which is already done, but now on what comes after that.
Okay. So that's an interesting. That's actually very interesting. But so we had natives, and so
Yep.
what do you envision? So we're getting 6 groups, we're getting 4 new classes, and we're getting the higher activity, which I think is the big deal out of natives specifically. That's sort of my personal like, yes, chef's kiss. So what do you see in your head when you're putting natives together in terms of the new interactions or the new play styles? Or what did you find when you were playtesting natives? Like, what did it allow people to do that they weren't doing before?
Number one is, and this is really important to me, is to pick up how it works incredibly quickly. An 8-page rule book, of which 4 pages of it are appendices,
Okay.
right? Um, so that was a big part of it. And then yeah, the whole idea of, number one, introducing danger to the civilization tiles, as well as opportunity to take advantage of these rich native characters, NPCs that had been created. So you think about it, the knights, the dwarves, the priests, etc., right? They don't have a lot of color because they're just chips that exist at a civilization location. You can kidnap them or kill them or whatever, but they didn't do much on their own. And so the natives and the title cards saying that they had various goals and motivations in mind, right? That they were much, just it just deepens. It creates several layers underneath the chip that says, "Here's what these folks are all about." That's what gets me giddy, right? I said somewhere, my favorite new title card by far is the console. So we took the console in the base game, right? It's just part of the wardens and it's at the outpost. In the new expansion, it's now a wandering character, and it represents the king, his presence in this world. So the title card on one side is King's Grace. For 20 gold, you can discard an outlaw token.
Okay.
The other side of it is where he's actually looking for thugs to serve the king. So you can, if you have outlaw tokens, you can earn legend points and fame by becoming one of the king's brutes. And so I envision that, you're walking around to the civilization locations, you walk into town, and people like, "Oh shit, you know, he's here." Kind of like what's kind of thematically built into the executioner, right?
Yeah,
And that's just the title
intimidation.
card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
okay. Again.
did I answer your question?
Yes, yeah, you did. Absolutely. Again, like my sort of big vibe is hiring. I think that because again, you know why? Because it expands that silly middle of the combat range, right? Like, me hiring 2 guys and then going out is totally different than me going out alone.
Yeah.
You'll
notice
totally
that
different.
those hybrids tend to have some pretty decent stats.
Yes.
but not as good as the spellcasters. The spellcasters tend to be the best for hiring. I wonder why that is. They're the equivalent of armor, right? If I
Yeah.
start with 15 gold, I can actually afford to hire, some muscle to walk along with me, and that's by design.
Yeah. No, I'm very excited about the necromancer. I'm very excited about the Burgess, right? Like, again, I have not yet got villager army to work amazingly well, but I've tried. I've tried a couple times. There's always something that goes wrong, by the way. So it's a great
Ever since you
strategy
brought
if
that up,
everything goes right. But it's a strategy where everything has to happen.
yeah.
Uh,
The one
you know,
you meet the Omnicrux or an adult
yeah,
dragon, and
some giant thing, and you just eat it
they just get
alive.
fried.
Yes,
Yeah,
but boy, against a multitude of creatures, they're just killed instantly. You
yeah.
are leading villagers to the slaughter. So yeah, so I messaged Scott. I was like, man, I just want to hire all the villagers like in one turn as the Burgess, right? And you can. It's not in one, but you know what I mean, right? It's
Yep.
they're
Yep.
cheap, they're fairly easy. You hire them, bam, 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 and you go out and you can fight certain things really well, and then they get killed instantly by.
So
You meet the bandits, they're all dead.
yeah, and in one of my play tests, I went with that strategy. I'm just going to buy
Yeah.
these guys for cheap for nothing, and yeah, and then you meet an adult dragon who fireballs four of them, and you go, well,
Yes.
now I got half.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's all good, and that's great. And again, that's a good sign. I think. I don't think it's a bad sign. I think it's a good sign for a game. Like, this thing is either overpowered or a disaster. It depends on sort of what you hit,
Right.
and that's it. And you can, like you said, right? Sometimes you can min max for your luck, and your luck still goes awry. You just get that roll.
That's right.
Um,
Right.
but I do love of natives, hiring is sort of the vibe for me. Like,
It's
that's my
it's
favorite
clearly
thing.
the highlight. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there were the two main parts ultimately. Like, forget my imagination of what title cards represent
Right.
and thematically and how I can get immersed. The reality is mechanically it adds two main things. Two and a half. One is hiring. The second is danger at civilization
Yeah.
locations, and then the half is a whole bunch of new ways to add legend to gain legend points and fame by accomplishing certain things. Because in a certain sense, the titles are the equivalent of public missions,
Yeah.
right? You can look at them and know what's out and available. You can go, hey, if I do these, if I go kill a guardian in a swamp tile, I can go to the wardens. But you know what? Whoever does it first gets more. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, that is interesting. And so I will ask this question, Berserk, in one moment. Let me just do one thing. Um, I did think that was interesting. Is you were talking about how you could get immersed in sort of your imagination of how this all sort of goes, and um, I think that's a difference that we have. Not that matters, of course, but I think that's a difference. Like, you're like, oh, I can get right. I can get immersed and mentally sort of figure out how the story plays and so on. And I'm very much thinking about, well, how do these mechanics go? Like,
Mhm.
how does this literally mechanically change the game, right? So that's just an interesting. I don't even know that there's anything to talk, to say. I just thought it was very interesting that you said that. I'm like, I can sort of see where some of your design things go, right? Your design decisions go, because you're sort of living
Yeah.
this world in your head a little bit, I
Yeah.
think.
So I mean, when I design games, my big games are Hellenica, Story of Greece, Spring and Autumn, Story of China, and Dragon's Down. And in all those, like when I play a board game, if I'm playing Hellenica, you represent the city state. And ultimately it's a 4X game, right? And so
Mhm.
somebody can say, oh, it's 4X game and I'm trying to conquer the world or whatever, right? But in Hellenica, you can win through cultural dominance and by or your military dominance. You can win religiously. You can win a whole bunch of different ways. And so I always start with theme when I design my games. I start nothing bothers me more than when somebody pitches me a game and they start telling me what happens on a turn. I want you to start with like those 1980 movies trailers, where they're 80s movie trailers where it was like in a world, right? In a
Yeah.
world where dwarves are miners in space and pirates are everywhere. You
Right.
go, that hooks me, right? Because now I care about everything else you're going to say. If you say on your turn you can do the following things, I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. I don't even know what this is, right?
Sure.
And then all of my mechanics need to tie into that. So,
Sure.
for example, when I'm describing combat, I don't talk about cubes. I talk about how combat in Dragon's Down is very tactical and visceral. You are determining how much might, how much strength you're putting into swinging your weapon, and how fast you're swinging it, and how quickly you're trying to dodge your enemy's attacks. And oh, by the way, all of that is represented by the placement of cubes, and it's a limited resource.
Yeah.
And people go, got it. Right?
It's a weird vibe because, again, I think all it's important. By the way, I think theme's very important. Like, if this game was just a Euro engine builder, I would not be interested in it, if that makes any sense.
Right. Right.
But I do still, but still in my head, when you talk about natives, the first thing I think of isn't, oh, these are natives and they're right coming. I think, how do they change my interaction with the game fundamentally, if that makes any sense, right? That's what I'm thinking. How does this change how I interact with the game? And I like that there are natives and that there's a theme and that these ones are like cleverness and these ones like wisdom and these, right? I'm down with all that.
Mm-hmm.
But man, I need this to change the way that I interact with the game. That's sort of where the metal, where the rubber meets the road for me, So very interesting. And again, I think Dragon's Down hits on that quite a bit. So but I do see a slight difference.
So can I give an example of something?
Yeah, please.
Let me just a very quick example of something that I agonized over. What is the attribute that's on the priest at the sanctuary? It's not wisdom. It's cunning. And cunning loosely tied to evil. Loosely, right?
Okay.
Like the rogues and, and so I agonized over that because I'm like, well, the priests are supposed to be like druidish people. And I'm like, and that little thing that I agonized over led me to so many other things. For example, nope, the druids at the temple or at the sanctuary, yeah, maybe they're peaceful druids who are just watching out for the sanctity of the forest. Maybe they're human sacrificers that are waylaying people traveling by the sanctuary, travelers on the roads, and sacrificing them, to some hidden god, right? And that kind of opened up a world of possibility for me of letting you create the story. If the mission comes up, I forget where it is. There's a mission about maybe if I'm not mistaken, I think I pulled it out, but it's coming in a future release. But where you actually try to waylay somebody and bring them to the priests, is if that mission comes up, you go, oh, I guess they are human sacrificers. If that mission doesn't come up, you go, oh, I guess they are peaceful druids. And I like that, right? You make the game what you want it to be based upon what you read into the cards.
Well, it's interesting though. So one thing that I do when I'm playing, GMing, writing a world or whatever, I will have a much more detailed headcanon than I necessarily present.
Yes,
because I can make it internally consistent for myself, and that's important to me. But all that the players don't need all that necessarily. Do you know what I mean? Like, or
right.
They don't need to know that I've, sat there and thought of whatever, like, 2,000 years or like so I think you have a little bit of that in you where you're like, yeah, you have this internal consistency that you're ticking away theme wise that only needs to be consistent to you to some degree, a little bit, and then you can throw that down for us to interact with or not as it goes.
Yep. And if you and ultimately, what I'm really trying to do is make it so that Nutmeg or Patrick or Berserk or Rick or Raven or whoever is able to create that canon in their own mind with each play of the game, and that uh, they can do with it as they wish, right? And so that's where I come back to. I think it's more of a game system than a game in
Yeah.
that regard, right?
So Berserk did
Berserk,
ask, yeah.
right?
So Berserk asked patiently. By the way, maybe this is already something, or not patiently. I don't know. He might be fuming at his keyboard. I have no idea. He's probably like he's out. He's like
So
done.
he's never
like
coming again.
yeah, done. I'm out. Maybe this is already something you consider for the progression type system you said you're working on. But what about advanced classes that can only be unlocked through gameplay?
So, not interested in stuff locked behind a wall per se. Oh, so he's not fuming. He just did an LOL. So, um, I'm not interested in stuff that unlocks like a legacy game. But what I envision with the progression system is where you build classes that have never existed and don't exist anywhere outside of your game,
Hmm.
right?
So okay,
So
elaborate on that. Like, what does that even mean? Like, you just said words that right? I don't.
don't add
Go
up.
ahead. Go ahead. Yeah. Elaborate on that, please.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think of how much detail I want to go into. How about I go over the top and then you tell me if you want me to go level deeper.
Okay.
Imagine that various natives can train you on various stats. So the dwarves can train you on might, the rogues can train you on speed, blah blah blah, and that includes speed boxes and/or speed cubes. So the concept is as you earn points, fame, and legend points, you can spend them like a commodity
Yeah.
at certain native
Okay.
locations and gain attributes up to a certain max
Sure.
for for a for a character. Okay, and then the merchants would have additional cards shuffled into their or in their merchant pile. Let's call it two per merchant or three per merchant, whatever. Those would be um, special abilities for your class, right? So right, and so imagine like the ranger who can plus one search or re-roll a
Right.
search in a
Mm-hmm.
woods clearing. But there'd be a whole bunch of new ones, and what would happen is you just deal those to the various merchants as they come up, and then you could look at those when you do a trade action with a merchant. And so at some point during the game, you could say, well, I want my special ability to be, I can move through swamps for only
Right.
one movement point, let's say. Well, in order to claim
Oh.
advantage, you would have to have, it would say on the card, have visited all swamp tiles or something along those lines. I'm making this up
Right.
at this point, but
Yeah.
so, and when you take an attribute, that's permanent now, and you've now made your character. But whether you get you could go, oh, I have legend points to spend, so to speak. I could go to the dwarves and get a might cube. I could go to, or let's say the knights. I could go to the knights and get a might cube. I can go to the rogues to get a maneuver
Right.
speed. I could go to the sellswords to get an attack speed box. I can go to the priest to get a magic cube or right? And
Right.
so
Sure.
you're
Okay.
building your character completely freeform
So okay,
from
yeah,
anything that exists in the game.
that could be pretty interesting. Like if you right, you're saying, oh, I could really use I don't know, whatever, pick one, right? I could use another speed cube because I can always use another speed cube.
Right.
Right. Oh, where can I go? I can go to these guys. They have the speed cube, and I can go burn some legend points to get my speed cube that I need. Interesting. So
Right.
so now okay, that's a very interesting idea, right? I think that's an interesting system. Having said that,
Yep.
so okay, I'm gonna. So counterpoint would be, is there like games like Runebound
Uh-huh.
need that, right? Because you are building to a climax where you're fighting the big bad, and the big bad has a lot of bits, and you cannot fight him when you start the big, right? You just can't do it unless you level up to X times and get X powers. Same thing with Mage
Yep.
Knight to a degree,
Not
right?
not interested
Right.
in that outside of scenarios, to be honest.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So this would more be like, well, hey, it's more say not incidental almost. Like you're like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna get that speed cube because I'm here and I could use it. Like, and believe me, I think a lot of characters could use a speed cube. So I'd be all down for that, by the way. Right? But you're not building to this climax per se. Is
Yeah,
what you're saying?
Correct. And let's throw out a couple things here just to clarify, which is this isn't my highest priority, nor I think the most promising of the expansions that could be done. That's number one. Number two is it's not next. Let's say that too.
Okay.
Right.
Sure.
And it would probably not be done. I mean, you start out pretty weak, right? I have the cards done, for how you start out. You're a villager with one of each box and a dagger, and and limited. You start with 4 cubes, or I think 5 cubes, something like that. And so, the goal wouldn't be to where you build up to fight a big boss. No, it's still adventuring in the realm, either in an open realm or it opens up new possibilities for scenarios.
Got it.
Like, hey, you got to progress through to this following, some level or whatever. But to me, it would just be a fun way to create new hero classes that no one else has imagined except for you when you were playing the game. So it's more build your own hero than progression or development is what my thought would be.
Right. So, and that answers a bunch of questions. The one I had, but Dan also had, would you need to increase the difficulty? And so you'd be starting as a putz, effectively, right? And then trying to survive long enough to get to that point, right? Oh, I can get now a couple speed cubes or a defense slot, right, or a might slot, or
you wouldn't play this mode with a player for the first time.
Right. So it's similar to the development game in Magic Realm, which I don't like, by the way. I don't think that's really how.
I don't like the pre-programmed paths.
Yeah.
That's what I didn't like. And you start out with, 3 chits, which is nothing. Anyway.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I didn't mean to bring back Magic Realm. That was simply, done. We're out. No, we're out. I'm out. If I do it again, no more whiskey. So interesting. Okay. Give me a second. Where was I at? So we were talking about natives.
Yep.
So now we get to talk about legends. So for a while I was sitting there going, oh, I'm not going to look at any of these updates. Like I was doing the Christmas thing where I'm like, I'm just going to be surprised at the update at the legends, right? Because to me, I didn't know legends was coming. So when you said, oh, natives, and we're going to add a bunch of other stuff, I was like, oh, all right. I was like, ooh, this is great. Right. This is awesome. I'm not going to look at anything because I am a disciplined man who does not need to look at the presents under the Christmas tree. But I did. I'm going to say because I wanted to prepare for this talk. That's what I'm going to say. Okay. It has nothing to do with with me being a weak, spineless. No, nothing with zero discipline. It has to do with preparing for this. So very interested in some of the new classes and the new lineages, for instance. So, so let's, if we could talk about a couple of those, if you don't mind. Let's talk about the wizard first.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
So you have 3 attack speed slots, 1 defense slot. So this guy's meant to be a statue, sort of, right? A little bit.
Yep. 100%.
and he has two
He
sides.
escapes via the open gate.
And
Sorry.
two,
Yep, two
well,
sides.
it's interesting. He has two sides, and the two sides are totally different. It's almost like there's two classes in this class, right?
Mm-hmm.
A little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're either, what is it, blue, yellow, or gray, purple.
Yes.
I like gray, purple, but that's because that's an easy escape.
I like blue.
Right?
I like blue, yellow because I like that open gate spell. So think about it, right? You're not going to run away from anything. So how do you evade? Or how do you get away? You get away via magic. So it's a character that is not quite as dependent on magic as the Soulless is, where it's all magic, right? But you do have to, you do have to, you do have to leverage magic. That's a character that you don't play as a beginning character. The other thing that the wizard introduces is the concept of a hero who can learn spells with minimal risk or lessened risk, because you can reroll a learned spells die.
So you do. I will say,
Kirk is the guy, by the way, who's seen me die twice using the open gate.
The game. You
He's
do
like,
love.
Yeah.
You love that concept of learning spells as a way to victory. Like you've mentioned that multiple times.
Love it. Yeah. Yeah. Kirk won a game against me. I got 27 legend points, and Kirk beat me with 30 just like within 3-4 days ago because of learning spells. It's an undervalued capability.
Interesting. And the wizard is the master of it a little bit.
The wizard is the master because you can reroll and learn spells. Worth noting, the Infernal Glyphs, which has been announced as a legendary treasure site, that is a learn spells action. So the wizard actually can double down on that. And so that's you have one success, you enchant the tile with two colors of you. Have a second success, you draw 3 spell cards off the top and pick one of them, as long as you have a matching magic cube that you can learn that, and you just get it and you get the bonus, right? So you don't even, who needs a spell book? I can literally sit there and read Infernal Glyphs all day long, right? So
yeah, no, it's very interesting, and like I said, it's essentially 2 characters, really. And you're sort of picking your route, right? Like how. And it is, and again, much like, you do need, how am I gonna score points? I was gonna say, how am I gonna kill stuff? You don't necessarily need to kill things to score points. How am I gonna score points? And how am I gonna escape, though? You do need, I would say, you almost every character should consider, how am I going to not die?
Yes.
And
magic.
I said
leverage
escape,
magic,
but that could be I hit things, like I could have a bunch of attack slots and a bunch of speed cubes, and I just hit things faster than they kill me, and that's okay. Or I can get out of dodge.
Yep.
And that could be casting the open gate or vapor form if you pick the gray.
Right.
So talk about the Explorer a tiny bit. So the Explorer is, I mean, he might be my ultimate character, right? He has 4 speed cubes, and I'm all about the speed cubes. I'm all about those brown cubes. Like I think that's super critical. I think that's way, like there's so many characters that are starved for brown cubes.
Yep.
But he is not.
Well, and it's interesting, right? The Explorer's got the 2 sides too, where you give up one of those speed cubes for a spell if you want. Think of each of these characters or these classes in a sense as to, how am I going to score points, right? If you're playing the wizard, it's learning spells. If you're the explorer, you better get out there and be moving around, right? That's your goal. And the reason the explorer, like that spell cube, is so important is, grab a purple cube and cast fly, and you can explore like an expert, right?
Right. So, absolutely. Yeah. So I do, and he has an interesting power, actually. The power to take a wilderness token and go, I don't want that one. I'll put it back. I'll draw another chit and see what the heck that one is. That's fascinating, right? Because I do contend, finding sites still is the key. 9 times out of 10, you want to find a site, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because that leads you to all the other stuff, right? It leads you to the epic treasures, it leads you to the spell books. I mean, man, you can find those in town for sure. But I mean, right? You're out and about, you're trying to find stuff, you're trying to increase your level of power, etc., and get epic treasures, finding sites. And this guy has the way to do that a little bit.
Yeah, explorer's a lot of fun to play. The other two that are out there, of course, are the Brigand and the Burgess. Both of which, the Burgess has the icons of a spellcaster, but that special advantage of there. I laugh again thematically. The Burgess, right, hires folks and then has them do the fighting for him.
Yeah,
which I always laugh. There have been times where I've like run away and left my natives to fight. Right?
Well, sure, of course you do. I mean, what? How? I'm sorry. That's their job. Oh,
that's their job, and it feels better though when you do it as the Burgess versus like where you're a knight or something and then you run away.
Right.
You're like,
yeah,
oh, sorry,
I'm the white knight and I left my guys behind. Oh, sorry, bro. Right? Or I'm the paladin. Yeah, 100%.
Right. I picture the Burgess as being the character that gets, like Paul Reiser's character in Aliens, where he's like, hey, I'm just out for profit. I'm just out for whatever. So a lot of fun to play the Burgess.
And I do
Brigand is a difficult. Sorry, go ahead.
I do think Brigand has a hard road. I like Necromancer. I'm pretty jazzed for the Necromancer. I think that's a fun sort of concept.
Yeah.
The only sadness being that you can't fiery chasm bodies into skeletons. That's my only sadness.
That was something that.
Yeah,
that's something that came out of playtesting.
Yeah.
So real quick on the Brigand, right? Their special thing is seek out where the bandits are as quickly as possible, because then you can hire them, and the ability to hire any of the bandits other than the leader at the start is really powerful, because you can hire a native that has a 4 speed on maneuver. And then,
sure.
If you're playing with PvP, that's very powerful, because then you can have the native challenge a hero to keep them in the location.
Sure.
Which is difficult to do without hirelings. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. No. The few plays I had with the native thing, that was one of the harder ones to get to work for me, primarily because you have to then find. Right? It's a little bit random. You have to go find those guys, yep. And if you don't draw those sites, those chits, and if you don't draw it, then it's real. Then your power becomes a little lackluster, effectively. Yep. So it just is what it is.
It's a little more difficult. The Necromancer is, I think, probably going to be the most popular of the classes, because of the idea that you can just create your own army. Playtesting showed that, what everybody did is everybody grabbed fiery chasm, everybody went to the village, everybody created 4 skeletons. Originally, 6 was the limit, and so, so the Necromancer is very powerful and very difficult to beat. Therefore, it takes time to build up your army, right? So, in reality, winning this game is always about action optimization, and so if you have to spend your time. If it takes you, 5-6 turns before you can kind of get your army behind you, you got to make up for lost time, right? As opposed to the other folks who were out there, looking for monsters or whatever the case may be.
No, interesting. So
yeah,
I do love the Necromancer, but I do sort of weirdly love the Burgess too, because it's a fun idea to just go hire a bunch of dudes, and I hate to say this, lead them to their death. It's just, I hate to say it.
You're a horrible boss.
I am a horrible. By the way, I think I am a horrible boss. I am the epitome of middle management. By the way, just so you know. Let's go. Write those reports. Do you have a TPS report? You're dead, and you made a skeleton for me. Thank you. No, okay, yes, I'm a horror. I am. How does your class?
Right.
This is. This is we could do like a test, like a Cosmo quiz. Like, what does your class choice in Dragons Down say about your personality? A little
Oh,
bit, like
right. No, I dig it.
there you go. Um, so okay, I do want to get to my favorite though. My
Yep.
absolute favorite, probably because it's overpowered, but it's my favorite. But I'm sure you've balanced it mathematically on a sheet. Is the gnome? I think I think the gnome makes a lot of bad class choices better.
Yep.
That extra speed
I don't know
cube,
that it.
again, that
Yep.
speed cube is so huge on some classes. Like
So
like
there's a balance to the like there's a balance to um the cubes, and all, and
yeah,
all the lineages mathematically work out. The gnome is a half orc with a speed cube instead of a might
yeah,
cube. Doesn't have a heart, right? So it's
sure,
really the combat. No, gnome is in essence a halfling combined with a half orc, which thematically works for me. Obviously, its advantage needed to be something that was a little more unpredictable, which is why it's draw 3 cards, keep 1. It used to be draw 5 cards, keep 2 or 3. Way overpowered, right?
yeah.
Uh, so, um, so yeah, gnome is kind of a great character, a great lineage to choose for new players because it gives them flexibility,
Oh, did you
no
just
doubt.
call me a noob? Oh my god, that's a nice that's I get the sideways insult. That's fine. That's cool. That's cool. You're just saying, hey, you don't know anything about Dragons Down. I get it. That's cool.
Right.
No,
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
But that's what I
no.
meant.
Yeah,
Yes,
I know, absolutely. No, but because originally I thought, oh,
gnome's great.
that half orc is going to be overpowered. And the answer, see, Manoob, you heard it here first. Thank you, Kirk. But ultimately, I realized I didn't play it that often. I did not play the half orc that often. Because that might cube is so less useful than a speed cube sometimes, right? And so you're like, man, that
Depends on
because
the class for
yeah,
sure, right? Like,
absolutely, yeah,
but but it can be, right? Like, I think most people try to double up on. They go, well, I'm going to be a half orc barbarian and kill anything I hit. Yeah, well, hitting it's the problem,
yeah,
right?
right. You have a 25% chance to hit it. I mean, that's cool. You
Yep,
better have some armor because you're going to take a couple hits in the
yep,
meantime. You just don't have enough speed to do it.
right.
And again, that is what interests me a great deal about Dragons Down is the combinations are very interesting, right? And something which, again, originally, just when you get the vibes, as my younger daughter calls them, you look and say, well, that's going to be awesome. And you go, well, wait, hold on. Let's think about this a little bit and let's do this. Um, that it isn't optimal. Like the half orc's not optimal for a lot of classes. He's great for a rogue, for instance, because you need that extra that extra might cube means something. But if you already
Yep.
have a couple might cubes, that third might cube maybe,
There's a
there's a
there's a
third
lot
might
of
cube.
balance. There's a lot of
Yeah,
balance there though, too, because you're if you're a half orc, you're not spending your time in civilization, which
right.
means it's a little bit more random because civilization, there will be missions and there will be title cards. And of course you earn no bonuses on those missions because you ain't got
Right.
no
Yeah, you got no. Yeah.
attributes.
Well, can I say one
So
thing too? Give me one
yep,
second. I did think that one thing about natives, which was very interesting, is it absolutely balanced the half orc. It actually made the half orc really crappy in a lot of situations, right?
yeah, you're
Because
not
he
getting
goes into town and he
yeah.
pisses everybody off instantly. Like yeah, it's not fun.
No, I thematically I loved when I was coming up with how merchants haggle and stuff. Just picturing the different negotiation styles, and your half orc is there saying, how about I buy this and don't, for X price, and I don't break your legs.
Yeah,
Well, that doesn't work for me, right? As the scholar, you know.
yeah.
So
Um, but yeah, I thought it was very interesting actually that ultimately I think the half orc with natives actually becomes kind of a bad choice not 9 times out of 10, but you know what I mean. Like a lot of times, it becomes a
Then the whole
crappier
point there is
choice,
play style, right?
right?
But
Yeah.
play style determines it, and is determined by what classes and lineages you select for sure.
Yes, I do
What
appreciate
do you
that.
think? Rob asked a question specifically
Is
for you.
is the healing sufficient in Dragons Down? See, I mean, I sure, right? I mean, actually, the nice thing is, again, the nice thing about Dragons Down is you have 7 cubes plus your hearts, however many hearts you have. And you really don't, and they're only wounded, right? There's no fatigue and wound and so on, right? So I do think one of the things in Magic Realm, I'm gonna do. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Scott. I apologize.
Go for
You
it.
know what? I'm gonna apologize every time I invoke Magic Realm on these. One of the things that is painful is that resting time, right? Like there's a lot of downtime for some characters in Magic Realm. There's a little less, I think, in Dragon's Down. Like you can wound 2 or 3 cubes and in a day be back up to fighting strength, right? And you're good to go.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't. You have 7 cubes, and you have hearts, of course. But hearts are usually a last resort because you don't want to be dumping hearts if someone's going to do 2 points and then all of a sudden you find yourself with 2 hearts and you're killed, right? So you got to be careful, right? So usually you're dumping cubes. Yeah, what healing? Resting, pretty much, right? Yeah, done. I think it's fair. I think it works out very well. I think you are punished adequately for wounding when you wound, in that you lose phases, you lose actions, and like Scott said, the game is really a game about action optimization. You have 120 actions in a typical game, minus whatever extra actions you get, and your goal is to score as many points as possible in those 120 actions. Done.
You know, there's there's an interesting point that when people start playing the game for the first time, they think that the cubes, like the health, that's your hit points. The cubes are your actions, or your combat actions or whatever. And the reality is the sum total of those cubes are your hit points, so
Right.
to speak, right? The hearts just represent what your constitution is, or something along those lines, right? It's your
That's your
toughness
wound
at that,
threshold.
your
That's your
wound
death
threshold.
threshold or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So hearts are significantly less important if you have armor, and so
Right.
I'll typically wound those hearts a little quicker. But if I don't have armor, you're right. If I have more than one, I'm guarding those hearts
Uh,
pretty preciously.
well, and I take any cube on any character. I'll take any cube that I
Yep.
can get because I have a green cube and I'm the executioner. First off, I can learn a new spell, so that's could be important
Hmm.
down the road. But just as importantly, it's a wound that I have nothing else to do with. Like it's a
Right.
cube I can wound that I don't care about at all otherwise.
Yep.
And that's super. That's very nice. So yeah, Rob, I think, I mean, yeah, I think it works out very fairly well healing wise. I don't think there's any, you know, there's no gap there where I don't love the there's not a lot of downtime, right? You can usually get back up quickly enough and get moving. So I'm all for it.
Yep.
Um, could we, if you don't mind, could we take 5 minutes,
Hmm.
quick break? We'll give people time to ask questions if they have them.
Okay.
I'll hit the restroom, maybe grab a drink or whatever.
I'll do the
Right.
same.
Let me put a text up there.
Back in
Sure.
5.
Back in 5. Oh, geez, that's gigantic. But we'll see how that goes. There you go. Back in 5.
All right.
All
Back
right.
in 5.
Back in 5.
Can you guys hear me? Somebody wants to type. I don't know if you can or not, if you turned it off.
That wasn't 5. I always feel bad when I'm back early. Like I feel like I'm cheating people somehow. So what is the meaning of existence? Oh, okay.
Right.
That's
Bit,
that's a rough one. That's a rough one. You know what? Generally sadness is what that's the but a bit deep for you.
so Chris, I'll
Yeah,
answer
yeah,
yours first. So and I'm going to expand that question just a little bit, because on the first campaign we offered add-ons, right? So the weighted chips were only available in the legendary edition, so that's the only way you could get them. But you could buy the dual layer hero boards and the metal coins and the extra set of dice as an add-on. Bottom line is almost everybody, number one, almost everybody bought just a pledge level. And so we actually lost money on all three of those add-ons that people could put in. There just wasn't enough demand for them. And then even afterwards, they didn't sell that well until this campaign launched, and then they went like hotcakes, right? And sold out in like 7 minutes or something. So, so the chances of us offering a legendary version upgrade is minimal, because that would be independently creating just the chips, which is the key thing from legendary and the dual layer boards and all that, but it and not having it part of a pledge level, which means we would lose money. We actually make less money on a legendary edition than we do on a standard edition because of the additional costs of production, because typically less people buy that level than the standard, and so you don't get quite the discounts you do on printing, a variety of things which I don't need to get into. So long-winded way of saying I wouldn't expect it. What I would, if you are interested in ultimately the weighted chips, dual layer boards, metal coins, and extra set of dice, I would encourage you to pledge at the legendary level. I know it's expensive, but the game's holding its value, and you could sell your existing copy and recoup your money. So not the perfect answer, but it's the real one.
I wish I bought the extra set of dice so bad.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. That is like the weighted chips, because I think the normal chips are actually pretty nice. Frankly, like I think they're sufficient. You know what I mean? Like I never felt they don't feel unsubstantial, if that makes any sense, right? The normal
No.
chips, the extra set of dice actually, I feel that at the table. I do feel it absolutely 100%. So I do wish I had an extra set of dice.
That's one. That's one that we'll always ponder that in the future, but I
Yeah.
wouldn't expect anything like that this campaign. Now, if there was a groundswell of people who said, 200 of us want to buy extra sets of dice, then suddenly that comes into play again, right?
No, but it's one of those things where you don't know until you know, kind of thing, right?
Right.
That's the weird thing. Like I thought, it's fine, but you know what I mean? Like I didn't think about it when I pledged originally. And then you
Right.
sit the game down, you go, I need an extra set of dice. Like that would be perfect, right? And that's just a weird thing that you don't get until you are practically playing the game.
Right.
So it just is what it is, and it's fine and it's workable, and we can work around it. It's not a huge deal, but boy, if I had to do all over again, I know exactly what I would do. Like if I was a year ago, I know what I would buy.
Everyone would have.
Dice.
A lot of people would have put in that extra dice.
Yeah.
I agree with some of the commentary that's been online where folks have had a discussion about whether the dual layer player boards are worth it. They're awesome. I love my dual layers for sure. But there's not that much, like the cards on here. You bump it, you go, oh, guess I should put this back in my weapon slot.
Yeah.
Right. So there's not. I think the single layer player boards, I think they're. I mean, it's a premium product and works well, right? So.
No, I think the quality of the the base level products is actually very good. Like I said, the chips themselves, right? Because you think, oh, you got the heavy chips or I got the light chips. They're fine. They're weighty enough. The only thing, there's one thing, the damn dice.
Yeah.
That's the one thing where I go, oh man, I wish, that's one where I go, you should have charged $20 more for the box and just put another set of dice in there. Done. And
I'm sure. Yeah.
That's it. That's one of those.
Yeah.
We know better than you. You should have told me you know better than me, and I would not have believed you until I sat down.
Well, and I'll tell you this: the one thing I've learned from this Natives and Legends campaign is that no matter what I do with honesty, integrity, and a desire to be as open and transparent as possible, I'm wrong. There's always somebody who's gonna say I'm a shameless cash grabber. After my favorite comment, by the way, of anybody anything's been made about me is the guy who didn't know about the campaign, came to the campaign, within 10 minutes had gone to Board Game Geek and labeled me a shameless cash grabber.
Yeah, look,
like
I've
worked on the game for 20 years, and everybody knows that who's paid any kind of attention. So the idea that I'm just making a quick shameless cash grab.
This is the.
I'm not very good at it.
You are so shameless. And making and obviously rolling in money. Look, I am middle management in software, so I am defined by my failures.
Right.
That is all. That is literally it. I'm like a goalie or a pitcher. Like I'm defined by how shitty I do.
Right.
In my life. So I do get that. By the way,
I subscribe absolutely to the theory that a short conversation between Matt Damon and Ben Affleck when they were writing Good Will Hunting, and they were bouncing ideas off each other, and they both were no names, had nothing going for them. And Ben Affleck looked at Matt Damon and said, "Judge me by my best ideas, not my worst ideas." Right? And that one simple thing, and I've adopted this for everybody I've ever managed, is that allows you to be free form, throw out your ideas, and hey, we'll laugh about the stupid ones and we'll get them out of the way. But that's not what you should be judged on. You should be judged on the best. Go look up the rating of my game Realm of Heroes, which was the first game I ever published. Go look up what the BGG rating of that game is, and then tell me whether that was my best game or not. Right? So.
Yeah, and we sat on, we looked at Board Game Geek and some of those reviews, for sure.
Yeah, didn't you read through some of them or something?
I did. It
while I was on the call.
It was fun, and while you were on the call, and we read through, and it was, it is what it is. Look, anything you do, like you said, you're wrong. Absolutely, at some point.
And I will say this, and there are, you can do a search on Board Game Geek and you'll find these. And even if all I do is state the factual truth of what I've done or whatever, if it doesn't fit the narrative, what somebody wants to, or just wants to believe, then they just say I'm lying. I'm like, it's the old thing of, if we were talking in person, the person would never say that.
Right.
But because, the mob mentality is just kind of alive and well.
Yeah, the internet does suck a little bit. It's great, but it does suck a tiny bit, right? I mean, right. I feel that. So there's a question for you.
Okay.
As Nutmeg already gave you the question about negative criticism. Do you take it? Do you? Is it meaningless? Do you, right? How do you are obviously good. Like, gaming is a rough space to live in, I think, a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about board gaming because I'm not super tuned into Board Game or Board Game Geek or whatever, so you can maybe have a little bit more insight on this. But how do you, as a creator who's continuously putting yourself out there, because you do sort of put yourself out there a little bit, how do you sort of manage that in your own head, that sort of that negative vibe? Now, you've gotten a lot of positive comments for sure. There's a lot of love for Dragon's Down right now. Do you let? I mean, how much does that affect you?
So,
Do you take that to heart? Do you go, oh God, right? I mean, how do you sleep at night, sir?
um, yeah, I put myself out there for sure. In that I will hop into a game with a fan online, no problem, right? Or I will, share, um, I'll share bare my soul, so
Yeah,
to speak. Um, I would say this: I live for the moments when somebody talks about what it meant to them to play Dragons Down. Not necessarily the what a great game, although those are fun to read too.
sure.
But when somebody talks about how meaningful it is, that's the stuff that sustains me. And I have a core group of folks that I kind of vent to a little bit, but it
Yeah,
absolutely stings when I know that I'm being more accessible than most designers and being
right.
more open and more communicative. It hurts when somebody says shameless cash grab or, says we're screwing European potential
Right,
backers
right.
because we don't have any games over there. And even like I'll share something that hurt me personally, which is we came up with we have a distributor who ordered joined the first campaign, then didn't pick up the games for a while, right? Okay, that's not.
Hmm.
I can't do anything about. Then they did pick up the game, so that's why there was a delay in those games being available in Europe. Otherwise, people could have been buying this directly. And the only way this game goes into retail is if a distributor or a retail store joins the campaign. We're not doing that kind of after the fact per se, et cetera.
Hmm.
So anyway, so when we launch the campaign, we have X number of copies of the game, and the rest of the world outside the US doesn't sell enough of the game to justify a reprint, which is a minimum number of 500 copies. And even there, it's your profits go away. So we just couldn't do a reprint, and so the solution was you could buy it from us, or we knew that these things were on a ship going to Europe, but we didn't have all the details. And I'm not going to present half baked information. So what I said was, so what we told people finally is, we know, hey, they're arriving any day. We said, hey, all you got to do is just go to your friendly local game store or reach out to an online retailer, right? And just have them order the games from Front Depot, right? Because the Front Depot does not sell directly to consumers. They sell only to stores. Got to have a retail number, whatever tax number. And I thought, man, this is what a great simple solution. Not only you can support your local game store, but now we have a way that everyone can get it. And instead, what happened is we had worked really hard to make this work, and I felt like we got savaged online. And frankly, we had our worst day of the campaign that day.
Yeah.
And I'm like, huh. Well, what do people want me to do? Like literally, sell my car so that we can print copies so you can have it. Now, I will say the
I
final
mean, would
thing
you
that'll
do
shut
that?
up.
Would you do that? Would you sell your car to?
Yeah, so that a guy and I will say this: I 100% recognize where the frustration comes from, and I
Sure,
embrace it. Which is there's some guy or some person somewhere in Europe or
sure.
Australia who wants this game really badly, and it's one of their top games they want, and I can
And it,
understand the
right,
frustration of going, I can't get it unless I drop an extra X amount of
right.
dollars, right?
I
So
did, yeah, I did read that on Board Game Geek. The one Australian guy was really gripey about the price of the game in Australia, and I'm like,
yeah.
all the, like, everything's expensive in us. Like, everything is crazy expensive shipping to Australia. Um,
Yeah, and that's the stuff we don't control. Um, and so knowing that it comes from a good place, which is, hey, I
right,
really want this game, really helps me. But when people attack my character or imply that
right,
I'm doing something nefarious or lazy
right,
or
right,
whatever,
right.
that's not helpful. And it doesn't make me go, gosh, I really want to work hard for this person. like, which is what I do. Is I'm like literally, I've ripped apart my personal copy of the game to send parts to. Uh,
Right.
there's a great story. A guy was missing two giant bats in his copy. Right? Okay, so I just shipped them from my copy. I just shipped them, and then I sent them two giant spiders instead. He's in
Ah,
Italy. He gets the game,
he's
or Spain, I forget. And he goes, hey, thanks, they arrived. I needed giant bats. I'm like, God, son of a. Said sorry, please forgive me, and I shipped them another package, right? But people
uh,
don't see that stuff, right?
I
Like
think
this.
I think it's hard. I
So
think I think it's hard, right, for people to. And again, don't get me wrong. I can do this too. I think it's hard for people to understand what it takes to move these to get this stuff out the door. Like I don't. Right. We're everybody's used to. I go to my store and I buy a box. Done.
yeah,
Right. Or I go to Amazon. I click a button and a box appears at my house.
yep,
And there's a lot that goes into that ahead of the clicking the button. And
yeah,
for and you ain't Hasbro, right? Like you're not like this is a different scale of operation,
yep.
and you're only going to produce so many, and it's a harder deal to get that out the door, for you guys than it is for for whatever for TSR. It's not TSR
Yeah,
anymore,
no,
Wizards.
but like
You know,
even like I always
um,
laugh too because people will make comments and they'll compare their best situation to our situation. Like, well, I just had a game shipped from da 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 and it only cost
yeah,
$40, and why do you want to charge $80? And I'm like, I don't know. That's literally a live API connection into UPS giving us
right,
and FedEx giving us whatever is the best price, and then that's what we quote. And the way to think about it is it's a small web store
yeah,
shipping from Kentucky a
sure.
single copy of a game across the ocean to France or wherever it might be. I completely sympathize, but that's like none of that comes to me. I
Well,
wish it
so
did,
let me ask you a
right?
question.
But
Like, so what is a print run?
you mean size,
Size
or what do you
wise,
mean?
yeah. Like, what's a print run? That gets produced and shipped.
Yeah, so the minimum print run you can ever do is basically 500,
Okay.
right? And it's worth noting that that's 500 of the legend, so legend copy with weighted chips and stuff. That's a different print run
Yeah.
than the standard. Um, and you go up to. I don't think I'm supposed to say how many we printed, right? But you can probably surmise by looking at the number of backers and then rounding to the nearest 500, right? Should give you a pretty good idea as to how many we did. And there are print breaks at every thousand, so to speak, generally
Yeah.
speaking, right?
Okay.
So but just know, like, if you own this game, you're one of less than 2,000 people who have this game anywhere in
Right.
the world, right?
Yeah.
And as opposed to, I think Wingspan sold 50,000 copies last quarter,
Right.
right? So you
Which
can imagine what their scale is and how easy it is. You need it in Europe, no problem. We have 10,000 copies there
yeah,
right now.
I think it's hard for people to understand that for board games especially, the smaller you are, the crappier universe it is a little bit. It's a way harder
Oh, could I
universe.
tell you stories? Yeah, and even the idea of, like, if I have a guaranteed date with my factory,
Yeah.
right? If Wingspan comes to them, or Finspan comes to them, guess what? I just got bumped a month
Yeah.
easily,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and it just is, right? So we have a good
Well,
relation. I love our factory.
sure.
I think the quality of Dragon's Down, the quality of the print and everything's great. Cube color notwithstanding, and that was just a miscommunication. But
So yeah, so can I ask how that happens, or are you just going to give a good? Don't ask that. Like, how does that happen? For instance, like that's sort of
the
a
color.
yeah. Like, how does that happen?
So yeah. Normally you approve. Like,
And,
I'll say this. Let me put it
and
this way,
can,
right?
can I say one thing? This is not malicious. This is literally. I'm super curious. How
Yeah, yeah.
how
Here,
that happens.
how it happened in that one is they made a decision to match the cubes to the cards for color. Normally you provide a Pantone. Hey, I want this one, I want that one, I want this, and you provide the exact Pantone you want. In this case, I didn't do that because they've provided colored cubes for me in the past without that guidance,
Okay.
right? And so, okay,
Right.
fine. And I approved a certain color palette, and away we went. They then said, "Oh, I don't have guidance on this. I'll match it to the cards." And then what they did is they, like the red, they matched to the optional
Right.
cube box, might box, not the mandatory might box,
Right.
right? So, hey, best of intentions, totally
Right.
get it,
Right. Interesting.
right?
That's sort of crazy a little bit. Like
Okay,
it's interesting how stuff like that can happen. Like it's just a cascading failure of communication kind of thing, right?
well, but also remember, we're communicating across languages and
Yes.
time zones, and so we're not having these necessary phone conversations as much as we are email communications, that kind of thing. Now, I'll give some confidence to people in this call. Here's what we're doing for Dragons Down natives, right? Is we are right now in the back and forth of approval of what's called the digital proof. They send it to us. We go, this is all great. Oh, hey, you got an extra halfling card in here instead of an elf card, right? And you go back and forth until finally you approve the digital proof. Then we're going to have them manually build a copy of the game and ship it to us, which then I'm going to take it out. We're going to play on it. So we go, is everything here? We missed anything? Blah, 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 right? Then so that's our final chance to change anything. Then we ship it to them and they start production. What we're having them do is do the production, then overnight us a copy from China of the game, $500 or something like that. And then we're going to look at, and that's like off the production line. And we're going to go, yep. So that's how we discovered that the Trickster sticker was incorrect in the Dragons Down. And so we said, oh my God, we have an incorrect sticker here. And they said, well, we've applied that and literally put it into all these boxes. We just haven't wrapped them yet. I said, can you put a sticker in there? Yes, we can. Great. That's our solution.
So, okay. Can I give one shitty suggestion?
You can give as many as you want. Doesn't mean I'm going to feed them.
Okay. But can I always pay attention to old eyes, because I'll tell you what, the one thing, like there's a lot of old eye issues, I think, with some of the bits, right? It's hard to visually parse some of the bits on the maps, on the stickers, and so on. Like that's just something I don't know what I couldn't tell you what to do. Like I could never tell you what to design to do this. But like stuff like the character symbols or whatever are dark enough that it's sometimes hard to parse from a distance with my eyes.
Yep.
And same thing with the colors on the clearings for like the swamps. And you get used to it, so it's fine. Like after a couple playthroughs, you go, yeah, I know that's a swamp because I know that, because I sort of know it is. But it's hard to visually parse. And as I get older, and maybe this isn't an issue because I will die and young people will take over and it's fine. But that's the one complaint I have about my copy of Dragons Down is there are bits that I feel are hard to visually or bourbonize. That's what Nutmeg just said. Right?
So
that's the only thing I don't like.
Chris, here's my commitment to you. After Natives and Legends, I will not do any more reprints of the game until after you die. Is that satisfactory?
You know what? That's fine. That's fine.
Maybe I learned the wrong lesson from what you just said.
Yeah, maybe you did. I don't know, but I'm okay with it. Like that's fine. That's the only thing. The only thing is like some of the stuff on the maps and some of the stuff on the character bits. I just go, ugh.
So let me just say, this is for the benefit of people on the call. This is a reprint, not a redesign. Yeah. And so if you didn't like something in the original printing, you're probably not going to like it in this one. There are some exceptions. Obviously, we've not corrected, it's the wrong word, but like we've color adjusted some of the stuff. We've some of in the beginning of the rule book where it said here are the bits, that text was redonkulously small, so we've made that larger. and it's worth noting that if you bought the first printing versus the second printing that will happen because of this Kickstarter, we're including all the stuff in the natives box for you, including a tile an insert that's 18 tiles deep in the natives box. There's no tiles in Dragonstone natives, but the whole point is, if you want, you can take that out and put it in your core box, and then you have a place to store your 18 tiles.
And I want you. Right? I'm not bitching. I'm just literally. That's
mm-hmm.
I'm not.
I know. It is what it is. I mean, that's the other part of this.
Absolutely. Nope. I have the game. It's fine. I can play it. I will learn. Like, I'm not a dummy. I will learn what's what. That's the only thing that struck me was some of this is hard to see. That's all. And part of it is me. Part of it is my vision sort of sucks now. so right. That's all. That it's just one of those things. That's the one thing I do appreciate from the Magic Realm. Okay, I'm sorry. By the way, it's just a symbol. You can see it from a mile away because it's just black and white almost, right? It's beige and whatever. And then
when you roll your dice, you go look up a table on page 32 of the manual.
Absolutely, totally different beast. But yes, that's absolutely the case. I do appreciate. I bitch about modern video games. Like where they go, oh, okay, and you got all these trees and shit around, and you're like, I can't see anything. I just want NATO counters, please. Can I just go back to a NATO counter? And ultimately, I learn, and it's fine. So I'm not even great. Like, here's the thing, Scott.
Well, no, let's go. You are griping, but that's okay.
I will tell you when I'm. I will tell. Can we make a new class of griping for this? Like, when I'm not happy, like I'm perfectly happy with my copy of Dragon's Down. I'm thrilled with it. Like I'm not bitch. Like there's nothing about it which I'm like, oh, I hate this. No, this is just I just wish this were clearer to me.
Hey, Chris.
I need newer glasses. Yes,
Chris. Let me jump in. I can short circuit this conversation.
Okay, please do, because I feel I'm spiraling.
No. For every one of those that you found, I bet you there are 10 of those that I know about, and only I know about. Where I'm like, I wish I had done this one thing differently.
No.
Right.
And I get it, right? Because I have, like, again, I told you I live in software. I am defined by my failures. Like I have a whole department. Right. There's a whole department that is designed to tell me what I did wrong.
Right.
So I get it. So I don't want to be that guy.
No, you're not. Hey, just to be clear, you're absolutely right. Let me tell you a few things that I wish I had done differently that are pretty major, right? Number one, I wish that at the beginning of each major section of the rulebook, I had given a summary in non-rule speak of what is going to happen. So combat as an example, which is to say, I have this very procedural explanation of combat, which is thorough and complete, and tons of people have learned the game from it. Other people have really struggled with it because it's so different from any combat system that exists in games. And people have said, well, the rulebook's really hard to follow. No, it's not. But it's very different from what you've experienced in the past. And I should have known that and included that section so you go, right, here's an overview of what I'm about to read about so that things fit into place. Right?
Got it.
So that's an example of something I wish I had done different. I wish the speed boxes and might boxes have a fade to them, and the fade is reversed, and that was how I handled color blindness, right? In that if it's dark on top and light on the bottom, that's a might box, and it's reversed if it's a speed box, in case people struggled with that. Wish I had used a symbol. Yeah. Right, and maybe I will one day, but anyway.
Yeah, no. Again, don't. I apologize. I think I feel I've harmed us here a little bit. So
not at all.
We got
no, it's just totally fine. And the truth is I could go to Board Game Geek and read about the 100 things that I did wrong, and should have done better, or wish, you've delivered that information much more politely
Oh,
than
ouch.
what I've read online. Right?
Look, I yeah, no, I get it. Anyway, let's skip this. Patrick asks, what advice can you give to a complete noob for our first game? I'm gonna play a halfling archer. Good choice.
Yeah, halfling archer is great because you get a
Yeah.
reroll on your hide. You can reroll one of your dice, so you have a better chance of hiding. Archer is great because then you can snipe from hiding, which is really fun to do. I think that's a great one. The other one I really like. I'm a big fan of a knight. As long as so because the knight is just kind of a big bruiser. It's got a lot of armor. And
Big
can kill
offense.
big monsters quickly.
Big offense. You're gonna hit like if you can get in and hit something, boom, you're done.
So my biggest advice I always give to new players is this, which is every turn sneak until you get the flow of the game, which typically is about 6 or 7 turns in. And so just commit to, I'm going to sneak every turn to start. You'll start to learn when are good times not to sneak and when to sneak. But that's a play it safe. That's just so that you don't die. You still might die, but you probably won't die on the first few turns of the game.
What about Berserk asks, what about an event deck that can change things up in certain regions, like an earthquake or natural disaster, wandering boss, might force a tense PvP session?
Yeah, to turn player versus PvE everything? PvE? What's PvE?
Player versus environment. That's a
environment. Okay.
Yeah.
So Berserk sounds like a great idea for a scenario, and I look forward to you posting that online. That's the way that happens. There's one really cool idea for a scenario that somebody published, which is where you're not trying to get to a certain number of points. You're trying to beat an imaginary character that's scoring points as the game goes on. So the longer you play it, the higher the scores that you have to get. And they created this event deck. So I like that. Some people have asked for weather in the game, and that might be something I consider for a future expansion. The idea that costs of things change, but things like Wandering Demon Lord, that kind of stuff, that sounds like a great idea for a scenario, and that's the way I'd prefer to handle that. Yeah.
I mean, you could also Zaya's pretty, like Zaya has the wandering NPCs.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a pretty easy thing to emulate.
I can't share my screen or anything, can I? Right?
I don't know
how to
allow you to do that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Let's be clear, right? I've played the game with NPCs who run around doing the same things that you do in the game, trading with merchants, killing monsters, looting treasure sites. It actually plays really well and pretty fun. Not ready to announce anything or do anything further with it at this point. I have kind of other things on the plate, but that's a possibility. I call them, as you can imagine, legendary treasure sites. These are legendary heroes, and they might screw with you, or they might be there to help you. Who knows?
Should we post the Discord? Let me find the Discord.
Yeah, there's a.
Rob said, "Where's the best place to post suggestions?" Probably the Discord.
Yes.
Is that a good place, Scott?
Yeah. No. In there is literally, there's an entire section called expansion desires. There's playtesting, general desires, new treasure ideas, new spell ideas, fan-made scenario ideas. So that is absolutely the best place.
Is there a link? Can I make? I can't.
I'll get it. I'll grab it.
Cool. Yeah. Because you're probably like boss on the server, and I'm just a putz. So which is fine. Yes. I am a putz. Let's keep that in mind.
Right.
Yeah, I am working. I'm trying to work on my Barbarian Prince version of Dragon's Down. Super slow at the moment, but I'm trying to get there.
I'm looking forward to seeing it.
And I'm going to use, by the way, so I did want to ask you.
Hey, before we go there.
No, go ahead.
There's
go ahead.
somebody,
Please.
there was
do we have a question that I'm missing?
Yeah, well, Kirk from Rob. What do you think of special natives being more of a supportive element than another target? What does that mean? I don't quite follow that, to be honest. Oh, that's on the development game, maybe. I'm not. I don't completely follow that, Rob. If you want to post a little bit more on it, that'd be cool. So, all right.
Yeah.
So we'll look. We'll get more info on that, and then I'll respond. So, Nutmeg. One of the big ones that a fan suggested that was used was actually by Brian. I'm gonna butcher his last name. Brian Cromroy. I sincerely apologize to Brian for probably butchering his last name. But Brian is the guy who, Brian, there it is. And now I'm obsessed with getting it right.
Huh.
Brian Cromray. So Brian is the one who suggested having double-sided class cards where there was a different equipment kit on each side, thereby literally doubling the
Huge,
content.
by the way.
Huge.
That's huge.
So that's a suggestion that's in there. The natives not having relationships with individual classes, but rather it being determined by their attributes. That was a fan suggestion.
George. Yeah.
Innumerable tweaks to treasures, capabilities, the tiles. The tile set that's in the game is not the tile set that was. If you look at the video on the Dragonstone natives, it talks about how the paths can change beneath your feet, and you see this woods tile. That's the old tile set that was originally planned for the game, and I received some feedback about it not being good enough, and so we completely redid the tiles. Yeah. So there's and let's be clear, any future expansions will go free to play on Tabletop Simulator and will be freely shared with the Discord community so that you can that's the new mechanism for playtesting. That's what we did with natives, right? And why natives was ready to go. And we'll do the same thing with anything we do in the future.
Do you have that Discord link? Did you post that? Did I miss it?
No, let me grab it. Sorry. I don't know the best way to grab it quickly. That's the problem.
I'm an old guy. I don't know.
Oh, I know where it is. I know. It's on the best place. I'll grab it and post it here. But it's literally on the Kickstarter page. It's in every update, and it's on the Kickstarter page. But I'll grab it and post it here.
Let's make sure you can post it.
No, I bet you I can. I bet I can.
If
we're about to find out.
Yeah, let's see in a minute. Hold on. Let's do
that
first. Did it go?
I did. Or at least did for me. I see it.
I don't see it. I don't see it. Let me. Okay. Hold on.
I'll send. No worries. I'll send it to you, Chris, and then you can.
Cool. Yeah. I'll post it. Yeah. It's probably links are probably not okay.
Okay.
Because blah blah blah. Evil.
Yeah. I just sent it to you.
Yeah. Let me put that.
So maybe you can do it.
Yeah, I will do it. Done. There you go. No, and you should join. If you're interested at all, you should join. There's a lot of discussion beyond anything. Yeah, like that's normally on the channel. Like it's all there.
Yeah, and so think of it this way, right? The Discord community is more immediate feedback. Still use Board Game Geek for rules questions, that kind of thing, because it's kind of collated, and people can search on it later, and it's a broader audience. The Discord is used for people are organizing games to jump in a game, and they're providing quick. There's a rules hotline for I'm in the middle of a game and I need an answer to a question right away. And then there's a lot of general fun conversation there.
It's a great community. Like, it's cool. It's very
it's over
good.
400 people.
Yeah, it's very good stuff going on. If you're interested in the game at all, you should be on the Discord. There's no reason not to be, really. So I think we've
circling back to your question there, Rob. And now that I understand it a little bit better, you mean like the idea of I've hired a native and it enhances something that I already have, or something along those lines. I'm guessing, or some interaction with them. I feel like that kind of stuff, like um, I feel like that should be more scenario based than anything else. Like I feel like the stuff that's for the sandbox game should be more of just a system. And what you're talking about adds complexity, which I want people to opt into, not have to opt out of, so to speak. So
It's a good point.
And that, yeah. So anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So to that effect, so I was scouring the board game geek forums, looking for some bits, right? And
Okay.
I didn't get the guy's name, so I do apologize. But there's a thread, and he was asking you answered. So you've seen this thread. The guy was asking about game changing effects. Right, he was asking for like game-changing effects. I thought that was super interesting, right? And I didn't think it was as interesting until I read his counterpoints, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, well, of course, every game has game-changing stuff, right? Except for Chutes and Ladders. Maybe Chutes and Ladders is the only game that doesn't have game-changing stuff. But Monopoly, you buy a house that's game-changing, right? Like that's, and so on. But he mentioned Fallen Land, and I thought that was super interesting because I played Fallen Land on the channel, and it's a post-apocalyptic game. You get a team and you get stuff, right, and you go and you do missions, and it very much on a very superficial level seems like Dragon's Down, if that makes any sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
You go around, you do missions, you fight dudes, right? Same sort of vibe. However, he listed that as a counterpoint to having changing the scenario, if that makes any sense. And I thought that was interesting because, and I said, oh, he's right, because in Fallen Land, you go around and yeah, you pick a card and you go, oh, it's bad guys, and you have to roll this and you fight, right? You know what I mean, or whatever. Roll this skill test and you fight. But there's nothing in Fallen Land that changes your interaction with the game. It just changes the numbers. So yeah, there's certain things where you go, well, that's too hard for me, and so I'm going to lose. Or yes, I now have a device which makes that easier for me, and so I'm going to win. But there's nothing that changes anything. And I think that's one of the things about Dragon's Down, which really shines, is that if I get a single item, one item at all, that can change my entire list of things I can do and not do.
Right now, Kirk is laughing out loud to himself because of in the last game we played where he beat me, he knew, like, I was a paladin, and I had the ability to kill undead, and I was where the last battalion was, waiting for them to arrive. The only thing I needed was for the tile to be enchanted, right?
Okay.
So that's all I needed. And Kirk at another treasure site loots the disenchanter, and then he loots the portable hole, thereby allowing him to use portable hole. Oh, and it's worth noting, I was in like the Dwarven Ruins tile, and there was a campfire there in the tile. So that SOB, Kirk, who's on the call, portable holes to the campfire, sells the disenchanter to a merchant at the campfire, thereby preventing me from being able to enchant the tile in any way unless I go to the merchant, purchase the disenchanter at a horrible price, then go to another merchant in a different tile and sell it to then come back so I can kill the last battalion. So he's just totally nerfed my entire strategy. It was brilliant, and I both applaud him and loathe him. So that's an example to me of, like, those aren't even that big of treasures. They're important of treasures, but the applicability in that circumstance was fantastic. And we laughed. I mean, we were laughing. I was cursing. He was laughing.
Well, again, I thought it was super. Again, and you have to excuse me, right? Because I read these threads and I'm like, oh, right, that's super interesting, right? Because again, this guy's talking about, and it was a whole thing, right? And largely the thread seemed to me like convinced me to buy the game, sort of, right? It was that kind of thing.
There's a lot of those.
right? But I was reading it, I was like, that's super interesting because until I saw Fallen Land and I played Fallen Land, and I think Fallen Land's fine, right? But it fails in a lot of ways that a lot of those games fail. Skyrim fails, the board game fails the same way, and it's very samey. Everything you do is about the same.
So you just nailed what I think is one of the greatest values of Dragonstown and Magic Realm, but Dragonstown is the idea of I could play on the exact same map 2 games in a row with the exact same character and have fundamentally different experiences that aren't even remotely related to each other. And I think that's that to me is a success. I guess I'm breaking my arm here, patting myself on the back, but well, hey, just know I have about 15 minutes left, so however we want to spend that 15 minutes is.
If you have any questions, fire them super quick.
Yeah, if you have questions, feel free to ask. I'm intrigued by the horses. I am intrigued by the horses conversation. And it might be time to introduce at some point, additional items to the deck, but again, they've got to make sense.
I think Dragonstown is a combination game. The more combinations, the better. As long as you don't, there's a screw up point where you, like I said, if you make things. How about base building? Kirk killed me outright in 2 games as well. I think it's very. Go ahead.
Let's talk about those both a little bit. So, you brings up a good point, right? Okay, so horses isn't just it +1 move and it adds this, or maybe it's some armor, or else it now has to work with, what are we at? 28 to I think we're at 30 hero classes and 7 different lineages right now, and the various combinations thereof. So there's always that kind of stuff, like something I didn't anticipate is the idea that heal could create an infinite loop the way it was. So we're nerfing it a little bit in natives. But I know there are some exploits that can occur based upon certain card combinations. I just know it's not possible to build a system and not have those. What I don't want to do is introduce a fundamental mechanic like horses and then go, and it's just the thing you do every game is go do this, right? With this, so yeah.
The obvious answer. That's what I call it in various games. I say, you don't make the obvious answer. The obvious answer to everything is a horse. If you're, like you said, the White Knight in Magic Realm, horse.
Fiery Chasm does not create animated skeletons because otherwise that's what you do. Every time you play.
Yes,
the Necromancer, you go Fiery Chasm the village and
done.
And off you go.
I mean, it would be fun. But yes, no, I get it. I totally get it.
So my read berserk of your comment about base building is the idea of enhancing civilization locations. If that's not what you mean, then let me know. I could potentially see that happening. I could potentially see something there in a sense. That's kind of what the wilderness-based civilization tokens are all about: the campfire encampment and in that it creates civ locations in unique places. So how that would work and what it would do and why it would add more to the game for the complexity it would also add is always what I would have to think about.
Right. It's an interesting, I can make a camp here, but then what does that entail?
Yeah. There's the concept of caching that I don't have in this game that I think in Magic Realm is an optional rule, but the idea that you can cache stuff and hide it and then you can come back to it later, but then other people could go and search for your cache. I didn't include it because I wanted red backpack items to really be a nuisance. People sometimes ask, well, why can't I just abandon something if I know that it's a bad treasure? Like I have the summoning markation and I don't want the X amount of gold. I just know it's going to get me killed. Well, the reason you can't do it is because you don't know that that's why all the monsters are coming. You see, oh, holy cow, all these monsters are coming here. But thematically speaking, you don't know it's because you have the summoning markation. Okay? One could claim that maybe if you have the icon of the dragon, you might surmise that that's why the dragons are coming. But that's the reason is you just know you have this really cool treasure. You don't know that that's actually what's bringing the monsters to you, right? Thematically speaking. Yeah, I think Berserk, I think that's a great idea and probably something that's better scenario based. Games aren't long enough for there to be necessarily be a benefit to building a fortress, but I love the concept of, collecting certain things or having to perform certain deals, clear the monsters out of a tile because you've been hired by the king to go build you're the leader of a team who's supposed to build a fortress in a certain tile. I think that's an amazing idea for a scenario. I'd love to see that developed further.
It's sort of interesting, and I think Dragon's Down lends itself to that a little bit, right? I mean, I think you have a little bit of space there where the Book of Quests in Dragon's Down again. God, shoot me. Okay, yes, one more Magic Realm, right? Yeah, but I think
there's a thread about that on Board Game Geek, Chris, that I think is fascinating, which is somebody said, these are people who are new to the game. I don't think they already have it, but they've said, I can't wait till I get my copy of the game because I want to go through the Magic Realm Book of Quests and convert some of these into scenarios in Dragon's Down.
Well, and I think, I hate to say this. I mean, well, I don't hate to say this. Dragon's Down is a little easier, if that makes any sense. It's a little more open, if that makes sense, to putz with, as opposed to Magic Realm. Magic Realm always, to me, seemed like a closed system. Like, yeah, you can add stuff. Good luck. But you were ruining the vision. I always felt like I'm dirtying something when I touch Magic Realm. To be honest with you.
So one of Hamlin's dreams was that Magic Realm was supposed to be terrain packed. And of course, then they said, this is back in the 70s, right? They said we cannot make money by putting $10 games in hobby stores, en masse, and having people buy a game $10 at a time, because a lot of people will buy one and then they won't buy the rest until later, and you go, well, we're all sold out of that one. So one of my central design themes was it had to be a terrain pack focused, so you could just add terrain packs as you wish and play a quick game and set up in 5 minutes, or you could play a larger game set up in 10 or 15. Right.
And that's an interesting point that we talked about. Well, how is it for a smaller game to get out? Like back in the 70s, all of that publishing was a totally different beast. Like Magic Realm is indeed a product of its time. It very much suffered from the fact that it had how many counters and how many tiles and so on. Like it was a heavy game back then. And heavy, I literally mean weight. Like it was a publisher's nightmare a little bit to produce that game. And I think that harmed it in the long run, if that makes any sense.
Right. Yeah, no doubt about it. And let's be clear, right? You and I are all from that. You and I are from that time frame when you look at the back of an Avalon Hill game and say over 1,200 counters, as if that was some positive. Can you imagine?
By the way, I used to heft games. Did you used to do this? Did you heft games before you bought them? Did you go, okay, yeah, that's heavy enough. I'll buy that shit.
No doubt. You were buying by the pound. And Magic Realm was initially, when it was released, released by a war game company, did not have a great response, right? It was always kind of a cultish game, and so it always, if it had been published by a different company, it might have even
interesting
better because it was.
No, it would never have been.
Avalon Hill was
like that was one guy. That was literally one guy. So Magic Realm is one guy. It's Hamlin. Only Hamlin produces that game, I think, in my opinion.
No doubt about it. He was well known. There's a great story about he was almost this like savant. who was well known. Like, you think about this. Dragon's Down, as I just told you guys, right? It's like 150 spreadsheets,
Are
right?
you a savant?
I am not a. I'm not a. Definitely not a savant. No, I was. Right,
No,
I was
I'm just
not
saying.
humble bragging there.
No, I'm not
across.
saying I'm humble bragging for you. No, I was like, oh, very nice. No, okay.
No. Let me finish my thought, which is
finish.
Like I have a spreadsheet that's 150 pages. There's sheets wide, right? That's all the math and whatnot of this game. He designed a game that is more intricate, more interconnected, with more moving parts, and did it all on scratch paper.
Like, well, and version 1 rules are not that long, actually.
No,
they're not like the 200 pages or whatever.
I learned that when I was 10 years old, the version, and I learned off of first edition rules, and I distinctly remember crying. I remember throwing something into the fireplace in rage and crying. So that part's not a great memory, but
that's sort of sad, actually. So no, I will say, so I know you have to go. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I got about 5 minutes left. Yeah, unfortunately.
So I will. So again, I think the interesting thing one of the interesting things for me about Dragon's Down is I feel it is very expandable, if that makes any sense. Yep. Again, as someone who likes to create homebrew crap, and crap is a fine term. I am very interested in sort of that expandability. So
I will take it as far as fans of the game want me to take it. Is maybe what I'll say. There's there is. We'll be entering playtesting here in the next month or so on something new. About 60% of what I've created will probably make it into something. So, but I'm really excited.
So, do you sort of vaguely see the haggle mechanic as sort of a skill mechanic? I'll put that in air quotes, by the way. You can't see me, but you know what I mean? Like, so I see that in some of the cards that you have in Legends, right?
Yeah. So not really. In that, that's just a way of generating an expected curve, a probability.
Okay.
It could have been the loot dice, could have been the haggle dice. And you guys will see coming up that there are various treasures that use different dice only because it created different probabilities.
Okay.
Right. So keep your eyes out. You'll see more. There's more to be seen. We're about halfway through the daily reveals, and so that's just a way of getting a number, right? And of course, the haggle dice is already linked to attributes via the haggle mechanic. So having that be a central mechanic, unlike trying to solve the riddle with the imp and that kind of thing's pretty easy. There's some really cool stuff. The coolest stuff I don't think has been revealed yet, which is kind of why you do it. And I'm really excited for some of the stuff that's coming down the pipe. There's everything you've seen so far. There's more of the same, but different. Does that make sense?
That might be the perfect ending. More of the same but different sounds very exciting. It's a very good woof and scene.
Kirk has been involved. Kirk is Kirk, George, Angel. I'm gonna leave out names. Artasia, Fencer. I mean,
excellent.
These guys have been instrumental in making sure that you guys are getting the best game, the most polished game you possibly can. And the truth is, every one of these folks probably, at minimum, deserves a playtest credit, which I don't have in the game. And the truth is some of them deserve, some form of
Sure.
design credit because they've really made this into something special. And so as you're enjoying these next few reveals, of which I think we have about 10 left, uh, know that their fingerprints are all over it. They're amazing.
No, it's good stuff. So I'm going to be, sensitive to your time constraints.
Yep.
So I do appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much. I mean, I have 3 people watch me at any given time. So this is about as big as I get, Scott. So thank you. I do appreciate it. And I love the game, by the
Hey,
way.
it's worth noting, if for people who haven't played Magic Realm, come back and watch Chris. Chris live streams him playing Magic Realm, and it's entertaining to watch. It's fun watching him,
It's a shitty
agonize over
variant
his
though. To
decision.
keep that in mind. It's a shitty variant.
It it is a
So
variant, but mechanics are there, right? So
no, and
something different.
I by the way love Dragons Down. It is my second favorite game. I totally grok that. Like I'm there, right? Um, so no, I'm super appreciative that you coming on. I love chatting with you, by the way, and the sort of glimpses into your process and the weird vibe of a game designer on the internet in 2025 is sort of interesting, since I know that must be a little bit of a thing for you, right?
Yep.
Totally different than
Yeah.
if you were doing it in the 90s. The 90s, you just do a game and done, you're out. 2025,
Right.
everyone's poking at you all the time.
Right.
so, um, so I do
All
get that.
right. So thanks all. I do
Yeah,
have to
thank
go.
you.
Thank you so
Yep.
much. Thanks, Chris, for hosting this. It's great.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Nutmeg, APB, Kirk, Berserk. Thanks, everybody. That's it. We will get back
All
to
right.
normal schedule next week.
Take care, all. Bye bye.
Talk to y'all. Bye bye.